I took a helmet to the leg in the season opener, broke my fibula clean in half. And they brought me out, wheeled me off, casted me for about 5 days. 3-4 weeks later, I ended up playing on that broken leg. Played 17 weeks with that broken leg. This is prison rules when you go out there. You got to look for somebody to fight. Nobody's coming to save you. If you're helping to have somebody drop and extract you, they're not coming for you. You have to be the superhero of your story.
Time to sit down, keep it real, and cut the bullshit. Welcome to Table Talk. All right, guys, we're back with another episode of Table Talk. Today, my guest is John Welbourn. Real quick introduction: husband, father of 3, played in the NFL for 9 years. Eagles, 55 starts. Chiefs, retired at the Patriots.
Mm-hmm.
We'll talk about all this stuff.
Sure.
CrossFit Football was kind of after that, which is we're going to definitely talk about that.
Okay.
Founder of Power Athlete. Host of the Power Athlete podcast, which has over 800 episodes, launched in 2013. And aside from that, with the accolades, you've created programs, I don't know how many, right? So I'll just say that you've created some of the best programs for the avatars that you're creating those for.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm saying that is because some of them get replaced over a period of time, some fade out. It's just the nature of the thing, but you've been doing it forever, which means that the programs are more solidified, and you've worked with Navy SEALs, elite athletes, you've been an elite athlete, soldiers, basically everybody across the board. But the impressive thing to me about the programs is, you mentioned John before we started, is when you find that you may have a potential gap in a program, you're reaching out to people that can help you fill that gap.
Yes.
And John was one of those from a hypertrophy standpoint with, I don't know which program it was, but not very many, you know this because you've been around for a long time. How many people actually do that?
Very few. Everybody lives in this silo. Everybody wants to kind of keep themselves as the expert. And all I've ever said is that I stand on the shoulders of giants.
Yeah.
There's way smarter people that have come before. I'm just a good student, and I've had good mentors, and I've asked the right questions, and I've been, humble enough to do other people's training, see what I like, see what I don't like. And then I've just had more data points than any other human being on the planet.
Where I want to jump off on, and then we'll get into your timeline a little differently than what other people have got into it, is I don't know the exact year. I'm thinking 2012 when I spoke at a CrossFit.
That was when you and I met.
And I think, it's the first time we met. And
yeah.
it was, I don't know for sure like why I was there, but I think it coincided with a CrossFit football camp that you were doing.
No.
Okay, I didn't think so. Okay. Let me tell you my side of this whole story, because I love it when we have situations like this, because I'm going to tell you the background on how I got there, what I experienced, and how it will happen. And then you'll be able to say what your kind of side of this whole thing was. And at the time, just for reference, the people that don't know, the Glassman, I guess I can go ahead and say that, the founder of CrossFit was killing coaches left and right, verbally and on text. Strength and conditioning coaches, brutally, and personal trainers, just going after the jugular, saying they all sucked. So this is the only real context I have. And then I think it was Dave Casto reached out to me to be able to do whatever this thing was for CrossFit. And I ghosted like the first 3 emails because I didn't even know what the hell CrossFit was. Right. And then he was persistent. So I'll give him that. He was very persistent. And then before I reply back, I start looking up what it even is. Outside of the fact that Glassman's blasting everybody that I personally know. And in a way that was morally shitty, from my standpoint of that, because it wasn't, maybe it's true with like high school coaches, with what he was saying, high school strength coaches, but it wasn't true with all the coaches I was corresponding with by any means. And so I already had that. So I'm trying to figure this out, like just what the hell CrossFit is. For 2 weeks, and this is, I don't want to say prior to internet. There was the internet, but there wasn't social media. There wasn't AI. There wasn't all this other stuff. I can't figure it out for the life of me, what the fuck it even is, right? I get it. It's got the gyms and the affiliates and all this other stuff, but it wasn't even, it was just starting the growth pop. at that point. It was growing, but it hadn't really taken off.
Sure.
And so, and Wendler was working for me at the time, and I asked him, like, what is this CrossFit thing? And he, like, stupid as fuck, and he's trying to explain it to me. So I'm trying to figure out the methodology. You get what I'm saying? Like, if I'm going to go speak someplace, then, and if the topic I'm going to speak on is development of maximal strength, I want to be able to curate that into whatever that coach is doing. Sure. It's not a replacement. I'm not going to go in there and say, hey, here's conjugate, replace everything that you're doing. Like, how can I build this in?
Well, their stuff is kind of conjugate.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, it is.
They're random, the random selection of different movements. I mean, obviously conjugate's not random in that way, but they're varying movements.
But I'm looking for the strength component, the periodization. I'm looking for something
which didn't exist.
No, something to kind of latch onto. Like, is this block? Is it linear? Like, what is this? And so I'm like, I'm not going to do it. So we're messaging back saying, I'm not going to do it because I don't have a grasp of what it is. And then Dave's trying to explain it to me, and he's doing a better job than everybody else. But so I didn't want to do it because of that. Then I didn't want to do it because what kind of backlash am I going to get as soon as I do this? Because it was at the height of Greg being what I would call an asshole, at the time, just blaring at the height. Yeah. And so Jim says something to me like, well, just throw a number out that that they're not going to ever pay. Like, okay, fine. So I do it. Then they did. And I'm like, oh, fuck. It's like, now I have to go, right? So now I'm doubling down, subscribe to the CrossFit Journal. I'm trying to really try to figure this out. And the whole time I'm asking Dave, and to his credit, he was great. I can't say anything bad about him. He's just do what you normally do. And I'm like, but that's not going to fit with what you're doing. And it just do it. So that's what I just came to. I'm just going to do what I normally do, and that's what I'm going to do. So I arrive. He picks me up. Everything's cool.
This was in San Diego.
In San Diego, yes. And then we go to dinner that night. And I can't believe I'm saying this. And were you at that dinner?
I don't think so.
Okay. I kind of took it as, this is like something out of the Godfather, right? So
Did you go kiss the ring?
Kinda. Like when I walked in, there was a number of people, probably over 10, that were hugging me, that were some kissing me on the cheek.
Yeah, CrossFit was real big into hugging.
Oh yeah. And I'm thinking like, what the fuck did I get myself into? And Glassman's at the end of the table, like, drinking wine like it's going out of style. And
story checks out.
Kind of like the Godfather, kind of like a Godfather scene. Yeah. And here I am, this 308-pound bloated powerlifting misfit, with all these other people that
are like 145 pounds, 155 pounds.
And who I'm sitting next to was the guy that was writing the workout of the days, right? So I'm like, I can't remember his name, but I'm like, perfect. I'm going to use this opportunity to figure out how you come up with that workout of the day. Sure. So I asked him, and he said, well, it's complicated but simple. Like, okay.
It's like the biggest little city in the world. The smartest dumb guy.
Like, what exactly what's that mean? So I give it a little bit of time. And at this point, I'm texting, and we didn't have smartphones at the time, so texting was a bigger challenge. I'm texting to Alan Cosgrove saying, I have no idea what I got myself into. I just asked this question, on how this was developed, and I was told it was complicated, but simple. I said, I'm going to ask a follow-up. So I'm communicating this with Alan, and he just keeps saying, just drink, because I don't drink. Just drink. So I reframed the question again, and the answer was, well, it's simple, but it can become complicated. It was the same answer, just flipped around. Sure. And at that point, I'm like, I just gave up. I'm like, I'm just going to text Alan and just eavesdrop to be able to figure this all out. So then that next day, I meet you, and there was another guy there. I think he was doing the weightlifting at the time. And because I'm trying to figure out if there's any structure, any periodization, or anybody here that actually understands.
I remember when I walked in, you got a sigh of relief that there was another big person there.
Yeah.
And you were like, oh. And I came over, I'm like, what's going on? And I do remember us conversing, and I could tell that you were like pretty apprehensive, like, why the fuck am I here? Who are these people? Like, why are they so little? Like, why are these people who are so little into strength training? Why do they want to know this stuff?
Yeah, like how, not only that, but how is what I'm going to say benefit in any way for what they're trying to do?
Well, I think the context was Mark Ripto and, had come into CrossFit, and they had a huge falling out. Rip didn't like the conditioning aspect. He didn't like the fact that it was, constantly varied. He uses, basic barbell training, starting strength. It's really just, people's first introduction to getting strong. So he came in and was in the CrossFit community. They had a huge falling out. And I think there was like small contentions I heard, which was when you pull conventional, your shoulders are going to be in front of the bar, which was one of Rip's thing. When the bar when the bar comes off the ground, your shoulders are going to come forward where it breaks. Glassman was obsessed with this idea that the shoulders were like even to behind the bar, which is what happens in a sumo pull. And I think the issue was that Glassman had never deadlifted. Because as we got into this conversation, this was like this point of contention. And I think something came down to the way that you were teaching the deadlift, which is, nice and vertical, sumo stance, pull, chest over the bar, or chest behind the bar, shoulders neutral. And so I think what they were doing was they were trying to bring you in as a contrarian point of view to Ripto that had been, teaching starting strength. But as you know, the conjugate method and what you guys do at Westside and, consider the Westside method is not a beginner method. It's a more advanced athlete. And the interesting part, and this is where I get into a lot of the stuff that I started talking about and what evolved into Power Athlete, is there's a life cycle of an athlete. Like what that season is when you first come to the barbell looks very different over the course of the many seasons of your life. And I feel like if you kind of like leapfrog different seasons, like as a beginner, you need to train as a beginner, but then you need to move into an advanced and intermediate, you allow to make progress over a lifetime. And I think where a lot of people get messed up is that they either stay in the beginner too long, they see the most advanced thing as a beginner and they go in that, and then they never really build base strength. And when the CrossFit came to me, it just looked very disconjointed. Like the message was kind of this like, we're just going to throw it all in the mix, pull it out, black box. One day you might get a 5x5 squat and the next day you're going to run a 5K. And I was, my comment to them, which was, strength is really the platform at which everything else is built on, because they're 10 elements of fitness. And strength was just one of the elements. And I'm like, strength isn't the element. Strength is the platform at which all the others are built on. And I'll tell you that as an NFL player. I mean, we'll get into a bunch of stuff. But, I took a helmet to the leg in the season opener and broke my fibula clean in half. And they brought me out, wheeled me off, casted me for about 5 days. 3-4 weeks later, I ended up playing on that broken leg, played 17 weeks with that broken leg. I could feel it shifting and moving. The doctors had told me that you don't need that bone to play football. And I couldn't really run, but I was better than the guy who was my backup. So they were like, we need you to play. And the only way that I was able to go out and pitch a shutout against Warren Sapp and make Madden's horse trailer and all that was because I was really strong and really efficient. I could bend my knees and I could move in space. And when you started taking things from me, I had certain accumens or, talents that allowed me to lean on those. And, strength was one of them, precision and some of these other things. So
that's what I was looking for, is how does this block upon itself moving
I wish
forward.
We'd had podcasts back then. We could have figured this thing out in real time.
And one point with Mark is he called me about that, because of the content I was putting out with the shoulders and then what he was putting out. And we talked this through and we were saying the same things, but this is going way back. So I'm coming from a demographic of people that are big and thick. Right. So a bigger delt, it's probably going to line up. But
dude's chest like this.
When you're looking at where the shoulder blades and the scapula sits, we were right. We were saying the same thing. So he exposed me to how my messaging, going across different demographics is going to fade. And that was, I know I've been awakened to that many times, over the X number of years I've been in there. Because you don't know. I mean, when the internet's young, you're just putting out the things that you're saying and you're doing and, thinking it's going to apply to different demographics until you go out and do a clinic. I'll use the arch back as an example all the time. I go out, start teaching the squat in clinics and all of a sudden people look like a banana and I'm saying, what the fuck are you doing? Like, I'm doing what you told me to do.
Arch the bar
like, well, wasn't really saying. Then you realize the people that I was training with had 2 liters for erectors.
Yeah.
We're just tightening our lats.
Sure.
You know, that was the cue that we used. It doesn't transfer to somebody that's 6'8", 185 pounds.
Yeah.
And so it's, as I'm going through, before I started speaking, and Greg's talking, and he makes the comment, and I listen when people are presenting, because there's opportunities to learn everywhere, even, maybe the listeners don't. There's opportunities to learn from everybody, even if you disagree with most of what they said.
Yeah, no, you can gather something from anybody.
There's something. Everybody. So I'm listening, and at one point he said he's been following my career since 1984. And I remember the date, because in my head, I'm like, no, wait a minute. I was in junior high school, at that time. Unless he's following the Findlay, Ohio newspaper, no, he's not. This is bullshit. And so that was like a red flag, like immediate red flag.
That was the first red flag?
That was it. No, because we had the whole Godfather, cult type of thing beforehand. And so then I go through and I do what I normally do. And when I came back, what I will say is when I came back, out of all the people that I've presented with before that time, a few hundred seminars maybe, the most engaging, because this was all HQ people, the most engaging questions that I've ever had, the best people to be able to coach and work with, by far. I mean, it's that side, it's take the weird, the top weird side. That side was these people really give a shit about their education, moving forward, how they can help other people and all this other stuff. And coachable. That's another, you've done a lot of clinics. That's another thing that kind of, and there's a spectrum of that, but definitely in the higher spectrum, of coachable. And so that impressed the shit out of me. Once I got back, and I think this may play into what you were saying a little bit, I was presented with, do you want to do a powerlifting certification? That's when things got dicey. Let's just put it that way. Because I'm trying to factor this in from a business perspective and moral perspective. I mean, there's a lot of different perspectives because I don't know who I'd be working for outside of a very small conversation. And that's always a dicey type of thing. But I liked the people I was teaching, which is
really why I worked for CrossFit.
Yeah, which is
because the community and people that showed up were
it's different.
Amazing.
They are very amazing.
Like they were going to show up on a Saturday morning. People were engaged. They wanted to learn better. They wanted to be better. They wanted to learn more. They were like ready to rip off their shirts, die on the sword. I mean, the effort and like the enthusiasm of the community is what drew me in.
Yeah.
I was in an interesting position in that they asked me not to teach CrossFit. They asked me to develop my own style of CrossFit, basically my training, and just translate it for CrossFitters, which was like, Glassman's original directive was like, hey, CrossFit's in the middle, we'll have endurance over here, and then we're going to have, this power sport thing, big, strong athletes moving this. And they were like, let's call it CrossFit Football. And I'm like, that's a terrible name. People are going to think that we're going to be teaching football plays. And he's like, no, people get it because you played football. And I was like, all right, I'll go with it. And that's where it all kind of started. But I mean, the original mission was very clear. But what I really was romanced with was the
people.
Yeah, the people. I mean, the community and the crowd, and just like, so when you're a professional athlete, you live in like this ivory tower.
Yeah.
Right. I live in this bubble of ivory tower. Right. I train at facilities that only professional athletes go to. There was no really social media. So I thought that we were kind of just living in this, like, everybody's a pro athlete. Everybody's 6'5". Everybody can, do this and this and this. And so I'd very occasionally go to commercial gyms. And I just thought that, most people like maybe did like a Smith machine squad, and maybe they went out and they ran, a 5K, or they were trying to do a marathon. And then you had, obviously the old powerlifter that trained me, George Zangus, in high school, Marathon Nutrition, started, invented the super suits and the wraps. Yeah. And so that early, powerlifting stuff. So I knew there was powerlifting. I knew there was Olympic lifting. I didn't, and powerlifting was so fringy in a lot of ways that, to go into a big time gym, and we used to do, there was like Iron Sports, which was in Ridley, in Pennsylvania. So, I mean, there were a couple places we went, but for the most part, like I didn't go to a commercial gym. And then when I showed up and saw a CrossFit gym, I was like, oh shit, these are like little micro training facilities, and people are in there cleaning, they're lifting, they're deadlifting. I mean, people were throwing weight around, they're doing pull-ups and all these movements. And I was like, shit, these people are actually training like athletes. Whereas I did not even know that this segment of the market existed. I was like, shit, dude, these are my people, because I grew up training in a garage.
Neither did I, because all the consulting and stuff I was doing was with universities or pro teams with Louis, or visiting places like Verstegen's and other places like that. So and there were smaller sport training facilities starting to pop up.
There really weren't. I mean,
there weren't a lot,
no,
right?
Not at all.
I mean, there were.
Not
when
like
you
today.
were playing, you probably had 3.
Well, so I lived in Newport Beach, and I used to have to drive to Athletes Performance in Carson. And part of the reason that I even started, and then I used to go to this sports club thing, which was like more just like a gym. And there were some bodybuilder dudes that I used to train with that were real strong. So like they would hit me up, hey, we're going to lift heavy today. When they were in their off season and they were taking a lot of gas, those guys were great fucking training partners. Yeah. I mean, you could bench heavy, we could squat, like everything was heavy. And I was like, oh man, I'll go. When they got into their prep stuff and they started all dieting, all of a sudden their like strength kind of diminished and I didn't train with them as much. But that was my kind of one spot where I go Athletes Performance. And then when I got tired of driving to Carson every day, that was when we started training at the CrossFit gym. That was right up the road, had bumper plates, had everything that I needed. And I was like, man, this is great. And I was just amazed that people were willing to do this stuff. And I've been saying that for years. I'm like, I came in the CrossFit thing and I was just fascinated that like normal people wanted to be athletes. I kind of thought that for most people, like the season of athleticism kind of dwindled. Some people maybe high school and college, and maybe they ran a marathon or they were triathletes or something. Like there wasn't, CrossFit games, there wasn't high rocks, there really wasn't anything. There was no go rucks. Like there was just nothing for people for adult fitness.
Staying hydrated is huge for training and performance. And this is why today's episode is brought to you by Element. Element gives you exactly what your body needs: 1,000 milligrams of sodium, 200 milligrams of potassium, 60 milligrams of magnesium, 0 sugar, and no junk. Personally, I like to mix half a pack with my morning oatmeal. I'll use any of the chocolate flavors. I drink it with all my training sessions, watermelon being my favorite. Some other reasons why I use it is stable energy with no crash. It fights off fatigue and cramps, improves mental focus and clarity, helps regulate stress, and supports deeper sleep. And there's no sugar and garbage. Here's the best part. You can try it totally risk-free. Right now, Element is offering a free 8-count sample pack of its most popular flavors. With each purchase, you get 2 of each of these 4 fan favorites, perfect for finding your own favorite or sharing with a friend. Don't like it? Give it to a salty friend and Element will give you your money back. Head over to www.drinklmnt.com/table talk.
And I was like, oh shit, this is pretty awesome.
That's what I would figured as well. They just retired at commercial gyms.
Yeah. And they would do Smith machine and like little looking girls.
So as I'm going back and forth with, I believe it was Dave, I'm also calling pretty much every strength coach that I knew, right? Because we're an education platform that's supported by the products that we sell.
Sure.
Right. So the products matter, but the products are really there just to pay for the content that we're putting out. And I've asked a question, like if I give you a PO, right? And then that I'm doing this, CrossFit, powerlifting, whatever they wanted to call the thing. What are you going to think if you have competitors' POs? Like, how is that going to play in your decision? Because keep in mind, they were all aware because they were getting slammed by this guy. Not that they were going reading all the posts because they're too busy for all that shit. Yeah. But they were aware in a sense that was probably more so, or overreacting to what was actually being said. Yeah. Because it's third party information being told to them. They're just like, fuck that guy, I have to work with you know, whatever it is. And so I come to the conclusion that this is not a good move. It's not a good business move. And so the offer, as things do, they just keep getting better. I'm like, this is not a good business move. And the final decision on that is there were 3 other companies that were in the space at that time that had affiliates. Like, so if it was, say, a glute ham race, right? And there's 4 companies that are basically serving that market at the time. And I'm one of those, and the other 3 have affiliates. Who's the person going to go with? You know, they're going to go with the brother, you know, that's got that affiliate. So it's the conversation. Dave was always great. I don't want to take anything away from him. He was always great.
No,
it was just like,
Dave's a smart dude.
He was like, this, I don't think this is in the best interest of me. I don't think it's in the best interest of the company. Here's a few people that I think would serve you very well. You know, so I passed off, you know, names of a few people to be able to do that. And you would think that would be the end of it. A couple of days later, I get a call from Greg. Then I knew I made the right decision.
Yeah.
And which was interesting, you know, coming from a person that I didn't really know. Sure. And it was, I don't know if he was drunk or what the deal was, but before that call, I was still conflicted. Like, is this really, you know, this is a big fucking market, and there's a lot of opportunity here. There's a big market. And not only that, but the seminars would have financially been, well, the way it was going to be structured. And after that call, and Wendler is a witness to all this because his desk was 10 feet away from mine. I'm like, you believe what this motherfucker just said on the phone? And
did he call up and motherfuck you?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. In a big way. Oh, you know, the biggest mistake you're ever going to make in your life. Not Dave, Greg. Oh, you know, just bam, 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 bam. And it's like, geez, man, what does this matter? I gave you the names of a few people that would actually be better at doing this than what I could, because part of what I wanted to have was I would only do it in my place, so I didn't have to travel. I got a business to run. I got kids and stuff. You know, I didn't want to run all over the place. Some of these other people would do that, and they were all in that education to where monetizing the education would help them. Where monetizing the education for me doesn't really help me because it's compensated by the products that we sell. It doesn't fit the marketing mix. It doesn't fit the model, where it fit their model very well. And I didn't give slack dick names. I mean, they were.
I haven't heard anybody use the term slap dick in a long time.
I'm old.
No, it's fucking great. That's a very NFL strength coach term. Like, look at this slappy. Look at this slappy.
Yes.
Don't be slap dick.
Yes. So it's. So
these kids are going to be on like ChatGPT being like, what's a slap dick? Yeah.
So on your side, because they're all HQ people, you know, I'm down there and I'm teaching a box squat. Yeah. And they're filming all of it, which I was cool with all that. You know, you got to sign non-disclosures for everything with them too, by the way. And, but I did put in the non-disclosure because I spoke about anabolics. Yeah. I said, don't post this, because back then anabolics were a thing that you didn't lie. Nobody ever lied about it. You just sidestepped it.
It was very taboo.
It was taboo. So you sidestepped it. I even had it in our contracts with sponsors. Like, you don't discuss this. Don't lie, but just there's ways to sidestep.
Times have changed. I mean, you got the trend twins.
Oh God, yeah. You can talk about it all of it now. And I mean, it's crazy bad.
I don't know. I think the internet and kind of the state where we're at now is all the information's out there. So people have to make their own decisions. The thing that I don't like is I think people see those individuals and they have like big YouTube followings and this. I mean, like, I think that they almost go to it too quickly.
They do.
And because they are, you know, I want to have heat now. And like, you've seen some of these kids that are like, you know, 18, 20 years old, and you're looking at them and you're like, like the longevity stuff of that. I mean, it
trickles down younger than that.
Oh yeah. I mean, but just like, you know, the Sam Suliks of the world and like, you know, the acne and all, like I see it and I'm like, you know, it gets shock value, it gets hits, and it gets monetized. So therefore anything that involves a hit, anything that's going to stay on your page is making it. And if that's what does it, as a parent and as a little bit older, I see it and I'm like, man, like what does this look like in a couple years?
It's already there. It's my opinion on that changes daily, where sometimes I'll look at it as, if they're really interested, at least now they have sources to be able to know how to use. Yeah. In a safer manner, and access to labs and stuff like that you would have had as you played, right? Not saying that you're using or not using, but you have access to the labs for your nutrition and all the other stuff.
I got my blood work done twice a year.
Yeah. So that wasn't available.
Like I have 20 plus years of all my hormone stuff. And so, and like all my blood markers and all that, just because to be able to really make blood work valuable, you have to have these kind of trends over time.
Yes.
Like, I know you work with Merrick Health, and I've been talking with those guys just because they do such a good job in terms of like their client involvement and like the testing, like very seamless, like really slick, whereas in years, I have a doctor I go to and he does, orders it and I got to go and then he gets it and then I have to it's not what he does. So, I think for like seeing things like Merrick Health and some of these other programs, man, like it's really slick.
So I think that's on that positive side, that's one of the things that's bubbled up is for most people, they know if they're going to go that route, they need labs.
Yeah.
Right. And that's a good thing because everybody needs labs anyhow, especially the older we get. On the negative side, younger people are exposed and have easier access. And that's a problem where the way I've tried to change my messaging is, and I do believe this is fundamentally true across all sports, is let's just assume whatever sport you're in is going to require the use of PEDs. Let's make this broad assumption. Now, if you start that when you're 16 compared to when you start that, and let's assume you're going to get a 10% jump, right? Just broadly assume. You get that 10% jump as you're 16. By the time you're towards the end of whenever your career genetically, tactically, or whatever would end, you no longer have the ability to use that, right? So it's the way I see it is if you have to use it no matter what, then push off the time that you have to use it as long as you possibly can.
Sure.
Because if you do that, then you're able to add 3 more years on your peak years, your best years. If you're a paid professional athlete, that's a lot of money, right? If you're a strength athlete, that's 10% more or more on your all-time best lifts. Only from the decision of going from using it 16 to 26. Yeah. And that's a huge thing.
Well, I was 6'4" when I went to college. I grew to 6'6" when I was 21. So I didn't own a razor when I went to college. I remember my freshman year, I'm in my, I get a roommate, we're in there, and he's like, after about a week, he's like, "Where's your razor?" Because he had like a full beard. I mean, he had like a full beard since he was like 12 years old, And I was like, I don't own a razor. He's like, "What do you mean you don't own a razor?" I'm like, I had never shaved. So I was like 6'4" and change, and I grew I'm like a hair under like 6'5" and 7/8 or 6, whatever they measured me at. So, I mean, like that was when I came in, I knew. So, I mean, I grew almost 2 inches between 18 and 21.
Yeah. So you're still growing.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, like if all of a sudden, you're making that decision at 16 or 18, like, there's a lot of late bloomers in the world.
Yeah. And it's the same message I've been preaching since I did that seminar, because they posted the video and I was not happy with them posting that video.
Did they post a video? Because I do remember them asking you some anabolic, like performance enhancing questions. And I could tell you were a little nervous because one, you weren't talking to, your community of people. And I know they had cameras set up. And I even think you even said like, "Hey, turn the cameras off." Or so I didn't ever see anything being posted.
Oh, they posted it.
Oh, did they definitely
really? Posted. And I mean, there's nothing I said in there that was bad.
Okay.
Right. Because you always know whatever you're going to say. Yeah. You could kind of go out there anyhow. But it was more along the lines of, save the ace card for when you need to play the ace card type of thing. And the only reason why it bothered me that they posted is because everybody that was sponsored under the company, I'm saying, you can't discuss this. And then here's this video of me discussing it on this main platform.
Sure.
But with the things I'm putting out there, box squats, speed benches, all this other stuff, which is kind of going against, a lot was going on there. From that HQ perspective, the people that were there, what did they think of all that? Because I just did my thing and then left.
I don't think they knew what to think of it. Right? I just don't think that they had the breadth of knowledge or the background or really to understand anything. I think that they brought you there as this contrarian deal to Mark Ripto. And I think you came in and what you taught, I thought was incredible. I really liked I actually remember you were coaching that girl that was wearing Lululemon pants with real thick girl. And wearing purple. I can still remember it in my head because I remember watching you coach that box squat. And I even asked the question, and this is so weird that I remember, one of the problems that I was always, what I couldn't figure out with the box squatting, because I had never box squatted, was, as the sitting back, there was like a relaxation and like a drive up. And I think I asked you about it, and I was like, how does that like, affect like the trunk and trunk stability, and is that like putting stress on the back? And you're like, well, it's not really a relaxation. Like you're just kind of pausing and then you're just generating force. And I think the reason being is big, strong dudes versus like people see what they're doing and it's not exactly what's happening.
Yes.
And so you gave some really good fine tips. I liked, one of the things, you squat a lot with like the toes out. And, we've always been very toes forward. The idea is because, when you change direction and you move through space, you have to be in this position, because if you're here, there's a force bleed effect. So knees track over the insteps, big toes forward. And it was funny when I, ended up going out and training out at Louis' place for a couple weeks. We were talking about that toes forward. And he's like, oh yeah, no, toes forward is the best stance for squatting. I'm like, yeah, but none of your guys squat toes forward. He's like, well, yeah, their bellies are too big. They need to open their toes up to get their bellies down, because they're 5'4", 340. And, now you're working around these different, anthropometrical ratios, and there's a cheat for everything. And I was like, oh, okay. And he's like, yeah, but if you have an athlete that can do it, that's what we want.
Yeah.
So I think there was just some small little discrepancies. I really liked the cues that you used on the speed bench. The idea of like engaging the lats, bending the bar, pulling it down, there was just, and then the accessory work, and that I thought it was an excellent seminar. I just think that the people that were there were not necessarily steeped in strength and conditioning the way that you would understand it or we would understand it. So, like I said,
that's what I thought.
I trained with a power lifter, but it was all raw squats. Zangus was big. If you don't walk it out, it doesn't count. Single ply or die, multiply was cheating. Like in there was all these little weird settings, right? Yeah. So I like all the accessory stuff. I use close grips, and I still use close grips and dips for all my accessory, and one arm dumbbell rows, and different rep ranges, I love all the science-based lifting where it's like, now it's like, nothing over 8 reps. And we're constantly managing fatigue. And I'm like, this is like pie in the sky bullshit, dude. There's some pretty cool research that talks about like different parts of the brain are activated under different, percentages of 1RM and different loads. 1s, 2s, and 3s and 4s activate different, kind of like parts of the cortex of the brain. And you get up to some of your like highest decision making when the weight gets heavy. You get under a heavy weight, and I see you do it. You get under a heavy weight, and all of a sudden, like, the cares of the world go away.
Yes.
And there's this survival instinct of like, I have to do this or I might die. That's activating that like top part of the brain in your decision making. And I train a few of the top Brazilian jiu-jitsu fighters in the world. I got into jits, just Shanji Ribeiro, who's my coach, asked me to work with like Victor Hugo and Philippe and Costa and some of these incredible jiu-jitsu players. Victor's like the top ultra in the world. And so I brought in and I trained these guys for almost, over 2 years now. And I didn't know enough about what they did because, I played football, but I never did jits. So I was like, fuck it, I'm going to do jiu-jitsu too. And so they asked me to come, I rolled. And so now I'm a multi-stripe blue belt. And we were just with training with the B team, they're getting ready for the CGI, Nicky Rod and those B team guys are Marriott Health guys as well, ironically. But yeah, I just trained with them the other day and got to roll with Nicky Rod and like get to see some of the, best jiu-jitsu players in the world. And it's really fascinating to see the strength conditioning aspect and like what different people are doing compared to the guys that I train. And we use a lot of like, singles, doubles, triples, and 4s and a lot of accessory work. And they got to be able to do pull-ups and, push, heavy sleds. And we got, 106, 150 and 200 pound kettlebells that we swing, just because that ability for task specific tension, especially in the hinge, a ton of mobility stuff. And it's been really interesting to like get into that. But I've always been the type of person where if you ask me to do something and I don't know about it, I am more than happy to humble myself and go be a white belt and go learn. And I think that's a big problem where a lot of people are afraid to like humble themselves or like, I don't know anything, show me.
Yeah.
And I think there's, in this day and age where, everybody has to be an expert because somehow I'm generating some content in this, and the more authority I look like, the better I am. Like that's not a world that I came from.
Well, it's it's interesting because you got 800 episodes of a podcast as well with hundreds of guests. So
some of the, honestly, like, and I'm not saying it's my podcast, but some pretty amazing, like, I mean, we did the last interview with Fred Hatfield before he passed away.
Yeah.
You know, I went and interviewed Louis, you know, a few weeks before he passed away. You know, his guys, I had done Louis a few favors, and I always said to him, I was like, hey man, like, I know what happened with the Vice stuff and Rogan and all that, but I'd love to be able to do a podcast. And when he got into his last days, I think it's Tom, called me and said, hey, you know, like, things aren't progressing. You better get your ass out here if you're going to do it. And so we flew out there and did it. So I've been very fortunate to, you know, sit with some of the smartest people on the planet and with some of the most experience and be able to ask them questions and be generally inquisitive and hopefully be good at the job that I do, which is, you know, pulling out information, being able to understand the origin story and take that journey and be able to provide that information.
Well, the great thing with it is no matter how strong your bias is, because we all have biases, it's challenged every time you sit down with somebody that really knows their stuff.
Yeah.
Because you're sitting there and it's very hard to not be humble.
Sure.
When you're around so many people that know what they're doing. Because then you realize, I don't know shit.
Well, that's good. So there's multifacets to that, right? Yeah. There's the imposter syndrome. Where like, do I really know what the fuck I'm doing? Which I think happens to everybody if you're worth the shit. If it doesn't, then you're a crazy person.
Yeah.
But I think what's fascinating for what I was able to do is obviously I had a system of training that I used when I played in the NFL. And I understood that from this like granular standpoint for the fact that I got to, you know, use what I did in the weight room. And then I got to go out and see if it worked on the field. And I knew exactly how sharp my blade was. I knew what I could and couldn't do. And so when I got out and I started kind of talking about it, you know, we have fostered and developed athleticism on like a global scale. We've worked, like I said, we still have contracts with the guys at Development Group. We still train those guys and have worked with professional athletes. Like last year, I worked with Will Fries, who played for the Colts, who was their guard, signed, you know, 5 years, $88 million. He came in and he literally just hit me on a DM and said, hey, I want to come train. I somehow got turned on the podcast and I was like, show up. And I was fascinated and wanted to bring him in because one, he's, you know, was going into his contract year and, you know, he needed to like really sharpen his stuff. But also it was great because I took him to jits with me. And he had never done any jujitsu. Yeah. And I was like, you know, at the gi, like, is there anything that we can gather from this in terms of training offensive linemen in the off season that doesn't involve them beating the shit out of each other and like, you know, bashing their heads? And we used to do a bunch of stuff and like put on the gi tops and like work on the grips and the pushing. And like, it was really a fun experiment. And then you also bring a guy in the training room, you know, because Victor's like 6'4", 260. He's a top ultra. And then, you know, Fries shows up and he's like, you know, he's a little taller than me, but he's like 320. Yeah. You know, I'm weighing like 260 and change. But I still train, you know, 4 or 5 days a week. I try to get to jits 3 or 4. You know, all the guys I train with are in their 20s. And, you know, like it was funny. I was, when I rolled with the guys from the B team and Nicky Rod, he's like, how old are you? And I told him, and he was like, man, you don't look like your age. I'm like, do you know many guys my age? And he's like, no, I thought they were all dead. I was like, yeah, okay, fair enough. Yeah. But I mean, those like that's what that's the receipt for good training is the ability to have longevity and be strong and be able to do this, like I said, over many seasons, you know, and then be able to like still, and like, I always get like, I can't believe you still do all this stuff. And I'm like, I can't believe that you can't, you know, like if the training that you were doing and the way that you were, you know, taking care of your body and all the things, like aren't allowing you to continue to be able to express your athleticism and your movement and your strength and just who you are as an individual, like we got to change this shit or we got to fucking go back and fix it. And, you know, I've done that for a lot and there's a lot of levers to pull in that and like fixing people. You know, when people are broken, they're not just like broken in one way. They're usually, you know, gut related, you know, physio, like there's different things. It could be blood work. I mean, there's a million things when you start figuring out why somebody isn't performing at their best. And what I've been able to use so well with the podcast is this genealogy. I have talked to literally like the experts upon experts of the best in the world about so many different things to the point where I can call these people in my Rolodex. I mean, we had Dr. Sabine Hazen, who, you know, has pioneered all the fecal transplants and understands the microbiome on a level at which nobody on earth understands. And, to be able to like sit with her and go to her office and go over and look at, she's done clinical trials on autism and dementia and this, and start looking for like what the signature was. 5,000 kids in her study on autism, took kids that were nonverbal and was able to make them verbal, 2 twin girls. So really fascinating stuff. And I think in terms of like strength and conditioning, there's a big kind of push, like, sets and reps and weights and equipment and this and this. But I look at strength conditioning as like this holistic thing. And it is. I mean, and there's nutrition. I mean, I had a guy on the podcast who was a big sugar diet guy, and we were kind of talking a little bit about that. And the joke I made is that, Mark Bell was, carnivore, the war on carbs, and he goes in the sugar diet, which is Mark being the heel in WWE, like when Hulk Hogan turned, to NWO. But yeah, I mean, like that's really fascinating research. So, some of my coaches and, we have a pretty extensive coaching network with Power Athlete, and we certify coaches. 2 of my guys are PhDs. One's still, doing research. I hit him up and I was like, hey man, like what's going on with this? Like, what are we missing? Like, what are they activating? How is this working? Is this really healthy? Like, what does this look like in terms of, aging and microbiome and this? I mean, it's the greatest determining factor for longevity is muscle, right? It's insulin sensitive, fat is extremely oxidative, but it's not just muscle, but it's your ability to carry a lot of muscle as you age. And that's indicative of, what's happening in the gut, and like what your microbiome looks like. Is it, do you have bifidobacteria? Like what is the amount? Like what does the parasites look like? Is the gut healthy? And are you, like eating a diet that fits within your microbiome? What does the training look like? What does the sleep? I mean, there's this.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it's this whole holistic thing.
Yeah.
And I think when guys are young, like everything works because you're young.
Yeah, you can get away with it.
Yeah, you can. And then as you age, like all of a sudden the margin of error gets very, very small. And you as an individual have to be really fucking sharp and, have really good people on your side and be able to follow smart training and understand how to do it. And you have to have a good solution and you have to be consistent. The greatest determining factor for success is relative intensity. Right? Whether it be in the weight room, in life, whatever, the person that can, work and train and live with like the greatest amount of intensity over the amount of time. Like, one day you squat 100%, but then you're so crushed that you got to squat 50 a week later, you're not going to get very strong. Yeah. So that person that can train at a high relative intensity for a long, long periods of time is going to be the strongest and the most successful. So that's really the factor and like really like the idea, behind, Power Athlete fostering, developing athleticism. And I remember Rob Wolf, who, wrote all the paleo stuff, and Rob and I are good friends. He's a black belt in jits, and he made an interesting point where he still does our training, and he said, your training is really smart, like really sharp and elegant. And he goes, the messaging in terms of fostering, developing athleticism is probably the greatest hack I've ever seen for longevity. Because you're asking people to move through space and do it well, not just clod through life. Use the training, find a way to use the training to examine whether or not the training was beneficial. Like let's say you squat 1,000 pounds, but you can't walk through the airport without stopping to like keel over.
Yeah.
Like I appreciate you squatted 1,000 pounds and like in that context, and that's what you're doing. But in terms of like longevity and space and survival and all these other things, like shit, I hope that place doesn't catch on fire.
Yes. And if that's their main goal, say they're a competitive power lifter, they have to be able to figure out how to spin out of that when the sport's over.
Yeah, very sure.
They got to bring those abilities back, which is all funny because this kind of goes full circle because it's simple but complicated, right? So the guy wasn't wrong.
No, it's probably the best analogy I've heard in life. Right?
Yes.
It's simple, but it's really complicated too.
Where I had Dr. Dwayne Jackson on, and he's got a biopsychosocial model of training, right? So there's the social aspect, the psychological. Basically, I boil it all down to physical, mental, technical, but you can expand that all out. So in the physical aspect, you have all the things you just talked about, plus 100 other ones.
Sure.
And then in the technical aspect, you got the tactical training, you got all the other things that all fit into that. The social aspect, you have the people around you, your coach, stresses and all. And it's so broad and so many different rabbit holes to go down that a good coach has to be able to disseminate all those variables and then figure out which one to focus on.
Sure.
For the athlete, and if it is, a professional athlete, it could the biggest aspect could just all be tactical. They just suck.
Well, I mean, so for example, when Will Fries came in, we were working on his technique. I mean, he's big and strong, moved really well. I didn't have to really revamp his strength conditioning. Like the skills were already set. Like he has a solid foundation. It came down to a technique thing. right? Like your body won't allow you to sit, let's see, your body won't allow you to go into a range of motion. It cannot develop stability. So one of the issues, or what I get into, is like driving your knees out, getting into a good position, sinking into your hips, and then being able to like use that stretch shortening cycle, drive the knees out, create that like internal hip torque to be able to get off. And it was one of the issues he was running into. So we had to go back and just do a lot of different stuff to get him into a better position. And as soon as we did, his technique looked really good. He was coming off the ball, and I was like, man, you look really slick, dude. This looks really good. It's like when Victor came to me, his back was so bad that when he fought in ADCC 2022, he couldn't stand on his feet. So 3 weeks before his back went out, he had to like crawl to the car. They did a few injections. Like he was like, I don't think I'm ever going to be able to do anything in this sport. So he goes in, gets into a second round match and can't stand on his feet to fight. So he just had to sit down and, play inverted and do a lot of that, and ends up, not getting submitted, but loses on points. And so that was a big issue, is understanding like, all right, like his trunk stability, how he's holding it, is he's not flaring, all the work that we had to do. And for him, because those guys were basically beginners, we had to go back and start at the basics and like, all right, X-axis hinge, step squat, Y and Z axis. I'm going to need you to move through space. And, it was really fun to go back and take somebody who's one of the best at his sport in the world, but a relative beginner in the training space. And one of the things that we did is we threw, heart rate monitors on him early, just because I was kind of fascinated to see like, what are the zones they're in? We'd had Joel Jameson on the podcast, and he uses Morpheus. And so we threw that on, and I realized that jits, I had gone. And so I started doing it, and like, heart rate's through the roof, I'm getting fucking murdered. And these guys were so good and so efficient at what they were doing. They were never getting out of like the blue zone. They were like, 120, 125, 130 beats. Like they never got out of it. And I remember thinking like, this is a problem. So now we got to find other ways, because their efficiency, because we're not getting training in that. So then we put, there was zone 2 days. We started using a bunch of different protocols just to try to get up into the upper registers. And as soon as we did, all of a sudden, fucking these guys exploded. And just like understanding like, all right, like what does it look like? What are the demands? And then how do we make them better? I think that just is really what we do well.
With your origin story, so if we go way back, the way I want to do this, because most people are just going to say, when did you start playing all this other kind of crap? Right? So let's go. I
do love origin stories. So it's part of my.
I'm going to do this a little different, right? Because
lay it on me.
Before, say, junior high, there's, I call them defining moments. There's either certain people, or it could be characters in a book. It could be movies. There's something, for instance, if I'm helping somebody to define their core values, and this is kind of a business thing that I'll help people with, is I'll ask them, before you graduated from high school, write down the names or characters of anybody that had an influence on you, enough that you still remember it today. Then they'll write the names down, and I'll write down, what did they say? Then they'll write down what they'll say. Flip the paper over. Okay, now let's do the opposite. Write down the things that just pissed you off beyond belief, and write that down, write that incident, and then open Google and look for list of core values that's got like 50 values. Now assign a value to each one of those things, because these are ingrained probably before, younger than what we think. And then once you have those, your core values. Then that's what you build your business on. I mean, that's because anything that you do to violate those is going to create stress, right? And it's all on a spectrum. Like you can go 2 standard deviations one way or another. Being uncomfortable, that's okay. But if you start moving that base over, then you end up just being an asshole, or you end up being too far on the other side. So if we get before you were in junior high, what are a couple of those defining moments that you can think of that just pop straight up?
One of the first things as you were talking that struck me, I think I was in middle school, and I was always pretty fast. And then all of a sudden I grew a bunch, and I put some weight on, and I went through a big growth spurt, and all of a sudden I went out to go run, and we used to have to do these time runs every Friday. I think I was in 7th grade. And I was no problem. I got A's, smoked all the runs. All of a sudden 7th grade, or it was either 7th grade or 8th grade. I can't remember. All of a sudden I go out and run, and I'm like getting C's. And I was like mortified. The fact that I was going to have to go home and give my mom a report card that has a C in PE. So I asked the teacher, I was like, hey, is there any way I can get some extra credit? Can I do anything to like, fix my grade? And I was like, because I used to be fast and now I'm not fast. And I didn't know why I wasn't fast. And, my dad didn't lift weights, my brothers were playing football, but like they, like nobody sat me down and was like, you're super uncoordinated. You grew a bunch. There's something called, rate coding and intramuscular coordination. There's all these things with myelination, this is not.
Yeah, you're just slower.
You're just slower, but you will be fast again.
Yeah.
Especially when you lift weights. And the teacher was like, well, you can come on Fridays and just do an extra credit run. And I'll just average your grade out with more points and you'll be able to kind of pull it up. And I was like, okay. So I told my mom, I was like, hey, I got to do something after school on Friday. Can you pick me up a little bit later? Because the bus left. And so she's like, yeah, sure. So I would go and do these extra credit runs every Friday. And, just out of like shame or embarrassment or whatever it is. And so that was something where I felt that like there was a standard which I had to hold. And if I couldn't hold that standard, I was going to find a way to hold that standard. And I think that's been something in my life. Like if I'm not able to do it well, I will find a way to do it well. And that instead of being like, I'm not fast, I'll just get a shitty grade and I'll go home and I'll tell my mom that the teachers were mean to me and this. I like took it upon myself to be like, I can fix this. I will find a way through this.
Where do you think that quality came from before that?
I grew up, the youngest of three boys. I got two older brothers that are fucking rad dudes. And, I've always emulated my dad. When people ask you, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? My father's son. I lost my dad 7 years ago, and there isn't a single day that goes by I don't miss him and wish I could call him. Like, as I was driving over here, I was like, man, I wish I could have called Dad. And my dad was a hard worker. He graduated high school at like 16. Ended up graduating college at 20, super smart, had a photographic memory, was a practicing criminal attorney for like 55 years. Like my dad was a fucking heavy. He was a badass. And he worked and he had incredible work ethic. He was super smart. And I think like I saw that at a young age that if you want to be successful, you have to work. Nobody's going to hand you anything. I've used this quote occasionally on social media, like nobody's coming to save you. You have to self-select, you have to self-survive, you have to if you're hoping to have somebody drop and extract you, they're not fucking coming for you. You have to be the superhero of your story. You have to go in and save. And and this is something that's extremely fucking big, especially when you become a parent and own a business and all this other shit and realizing like, it's on me. I got to fucking do this. Let's go. And, you might have moments of self-doubt. You might not feel this, but at the end of the day, like you take all that shit, you bury it deep and you just keep fucking going and put your shoulder to the wind and don't stop. As long as you don't stop, you don't lose. And, I don't know if that's a good recipe or a bad one, but it's the one that I've worked with for a long, long time. I mean, when I, went to college, I was probably typical slapdick, college guy. And, we showed up and, all these guys were big and strong. And I was like, well, shit, man, like if these dudes are all big and strong, they're here in the weight room, I guess I got to be big and strong. And I was hoping, like I said, I didn't own a razor. All these dudes had like chest hair and beards and they were all mature. And I'm like, fuck, dude. But I ended up, getting really strong. I think I squatted 610 when I was 19, benched 500 when I was 22. Had, 10 pull-ups at 90 pounds between my waist. I mean, ended up going on and being really strong. And then I got, I was ended up my senior year, ended up playing with kind of a bum shoulder. And I think that hurt me a little bit, but ended up going in and having good workouts, made a few little issues at the combine. I had a funny one at the combine where, I had been doing like 32 reps on the bench. And so I'm sitting there and there's about 16 guys in front of me. And all of a sudden, all 16 of them bow out. And there was like a 135 bench, 225 bench. And then there was like the marquee bench where you do in front of everybody. Everybody in front of me just fucking walks on the bench. And they were like, you're up. And I'm like, I've been warmed up. And they're like, we ain't got time for that bullshit. So I lay down cold and I was super nervous. So the first 4, I kind of shorted a little. I thought I locked him out. Oh, there you go. And he's like, no rep. Because these guys were all, the strength coach is there. Everybody's super hyped. We're in this like almost looks like a, like the animal cage at the Arnold. And I mean, there's people on top of me and they're fucking screaming and yelling. And I was just fucking nervous. You know, I was like mentally preparing myself, but all of a sudden they're like, "You're in." And the guy said, "Let's fucking go." And so I do this. And the problem is like my arms don't like naturally lock out. Yeah. Right. Like this is me locked out. Right. And so I do this and the guy goes, "No rep, no rep, no rep, no rep." And so I stop, take a deep breath, and then I locked it out and I started doing this. I think I only got like 24, 25, maybe 26 reps.
Yeah, which is fine.
Right. And I was fucking pissed because in my head, I was like, well, I'm gonna get hyped. I'm gonna do like 36 reps. So that was pretty shitty. You know, but like, you know, and then also, you know, you're there and they're yanking on this and this. And, but like, you know, that was, I was, you know, a big, strong dude. And like, I was going to go try to fucking smash this bench press thing.
Yeah.
And I ended up getting, you know, that no rep. And I remember like taking a deep breath and being like, you know, you can like fucking fold or you can go out and just fucking try to do your best.
So the same situation as the running thing, because the value was already set, but then that put a stamp on it to where you knew this is now a card you can play.
Well, life is never going to be easy.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, the age old Bruce Lee, like, don't hope for an easy life, hope for the strength to be able to survive a hard one.
Yeah. It's just the hard.
Yeah. It's just
part. Sprinkles of easiness.
Yeah. I mean, it's just part of the deal, right? You know, like going to the NFL, for example, I got drafted the 2nd pick in the 4th round and I show up to Eagles, you know, mini camp. And I'm like, I had been playing left tackle. I think I was like, I can't remember if I was left tackle or right tackle. I think I was left tackle. I was like 3rd string left tackle. So I remember when I went to college, my brothers had both played college football. And I remember my brother Ed, who's, you know, probably my greatest friend, greatest mentor, greatest coach, was a good college football player. And he's like, remember, this is prison. This is prison rules when you go out there. So the first day you go out there, you got to look for somebody to fight.
Dave Tate here from Elite FTS to talk to you about bands. We've been a supplier of bands for almost 2 decades now. So I've known my way around the band landscape. When I'm talking about bands, I'm talking about floss bands, long bands, short bands, bands you can use for resistance training, mobility training, body weight training, and flossing. One of our most popular bands, or actually our most popular bands, are the long bands. The long bands are typically used the most with squats, bench presses. Our floss bands are bands that you wrap around the joint to be able to help with mobility, circulation. And the short bands are designed for shorter range movements, bench press, deadlifts, and a lot of times people will use them with resistance machines to help accommodate the strength resistance curve. Head over to elitefts.com and look for bands in the toolbar or blowout menu.
Fight the biggest dude, the toughest dude. And he goes, don't go looking for it. But like, if you get the opportunity, you fucking throw down, and you throw down like this is your last, like your life depends on it. So, my freshman year, I come in and I redshirt, and, you know, they had me playing on scout team, and I'm going against scout team against these guys like Dwayne Clemens and Reagan Upshaw and Andy, I can't remember Andy's name, Andy Jacobs, and all these dudes. You know, Reagan and Dwayne both were 1st round top 10 picks in the NFL. And so I'm going against these guys every single day. And, you know, they're fucking assholes, right? They're, you know, big chip on their shoulders. Fuck this white kid. Let me get it on his ass. And I didn't take any shit off of these dudes. And I remember we got into like a big scrap, and Andy Jacobs was one of the defensive linemen. He like took a shot at me, and we ended up locking up, and he started kind of twisting my helmet. We end up in this like big melee clearing brawl, right? The whole D line like jumps me. All the offensive linemen who were the scout team guys like stood back and didn't help me. And I like basically somehow tangled with like 6 dudes. I get my helmet ripped off. I think I got hit in the head with the helmet. Like I got fucked up pretty good, but I didn't go down. And I was literally throwing punches until they pulled us off. And, you know, my deal has always been like I'm not afraid to fight. I've never been nervous to fight. You want to fight, we can fight, right? Like I'm not going out there like looking for fights, but like I'm not the type of person to ever back down from one. And if you want to go, like, let's fucking do it.
Did that come from the martial arts as a young age?
Yeah. So I started in, so my older brother got beat up by like some local bully, right? He's like 5.5 years older than me. So my dad wasn't a fighter. So, straight up Karate Kid style in the 80s, my dad like took him down to do like martial arts. And we went down to do this Shotokan, this Japanese thing. So he started doing it. And a couple weeks later, as he was like practicing on me and my brother, my dad just took all three of us. And so from the time I was 6 to probably like maybe 9 or 10, we did that pretty religiously, a bunch of days a week. And then I can't remember if I was 10 or 11, like 86, 87, we watched Tommy Hearns versus Marvin Hagler fight at my house. And I remember seeing those guys. I think they call it the War. It's probably one of the greatest boxing matches. I still go back and watch it all the time. And I remember watching it on and select TV. My dad had people over and they were watching the fight. And I watched those guys, and like Hagler was like chiseled. I mean, those dudes were like short shorts. They just looked the part. And they were stood toe to toe and just threw bombs. And I remember thinking like, kicking stupid. I want to throw punches. And about that time too, this is also like, it's really funny, man. Like as you ask me these questions, all of a sudden I get flooded with these memories. There's a thing in Southern California called junior lifeguards. And it's kind of it's like a lifeguard apprentice program. It started at 10. I think it's 9 now in Southern California. But you go and you test for a swim, and then you show up at the beach. Your mom drops you off, and you basically go to the beach, and there are these lifeguards that teach you to run and swim, and CPR, and you play games, and it's just basically like, what they figured is that, to be a lifeguard at the beach, like they need an apprentice program. So in Southern California, about 10 years old, you go into the apprentice program. And then when you're 16, 17, and 18, those guys become lifeguards. And so it's a big deal in Southern California. So we started doing that. And I think right around the time I was 10 or 11, we were down at one of the aid stations, like where they were teaching us CPR and these CPR dummies. And all of a sudden I heard like this like commotion. Like I was like people yelling, and we'd of course, like young junior lifeguards, like looked up, like what's going on? We're protectors of the beach. And we thought that like maybe somebody had fallen or maybe somebody was in trouble, just because all these people were like gasping in this. And so we like kind of ran over, and then all of a sudden like the people moved, and it was a guy walking, and people were like losing their minds, right? This guy had like a huge chest, string tank top, like big quads, just like looked like a superhuman, like looked like a Marvel character in the 80s, right? And this is probably like 86, 87. And he starts walking, and we're like, what is this dude? And so we're looking at him, and he kind of like sees us and kind of like stomps his foot at us to kind of like scare us away. And that was Lyle Alzado at his peak. And I remember thinking like, man, I want to lift weights. Like I want to be big and strong. And that was like the first moment I remember thinking like, I don't know how those guys got like that, but I want to find out, and I want to go do that. I want to be big and strong. I want to have that reaction, like I still train your Sheena, your assistant. Was like, man, you're a big dude. And I'm like, I've been a big dude for a long time, but I remember seeing that and being like, man, that guy was like, he wasn't just a big dude. Yeah. He was big in fucking shape.
You ever do a stupid workout video that dealt with like water in the milk jugs? And he had like, it was a workout video for like a cardio, one of the stupid things like the Jane Fonda thing. Yeah. And it was all the exercises were done with milk jugs.
That's right.
And the song was like War with the Weights.
Yeah.
It's just dumb as fuck.
Yeah.
I did it, right? Because it was fucking Lyle Alzado. Yeah. Big ass pump by the time you're done, because you're doing like 1,000,000 reps of side raises.
Dude, he's wearing like a big chain. He drove a Rolls Royce. He got to play D-tackle for the Raiders. So, when I got to about that same time too, we were playing a lot of basketball, and Art Shell, who played left tackle for the Raiders, he was my Pee Wee basketball coach. So we ended up getting to go to a few games, and I got to like see those guys like live, and like I saw what they did for training. I remember seeing Bo Jackson. I saw those guys with their shirts off, and I was like, man, like one of these days I'm going to be big and strong. I don't know exactly how I'm going to get to be big and strong. But right around that time too was when, I grew a bunch, and all of a sudden like the running. So like there was probably like right around that age, like somewhere in that like 9, 10, 11, like there was a few things that happened that I think were very pivotal. And, and then when I got to high school, I had never played football. And I remember that, I think it was 8th grade. Yeah, that was the year I kind of grew a bunch, like right around that 7th, 8th grade. And I remember I was a pretty decent little basketball player. And then all of a sudden I wasn't. Like, I mean, I grew, and like my coordination just went in the toilet. Like I couldn't like shoot the ball to hit the thing. Like everything was garbage. And I remember I had a basketball coach who was like kind of a dick, and just was like, next year when you go to high school, you think you're going to play football, you're going to quit the first day. You're never going to play. You're going to be, like you have no talent. You're garbage. And I was like, fuck, I mean, telling like a, 10, 11, 12-year-old kid that was kind of shitty. Obviously I wonder where that dude is in this world. But so when I went out to go play football, I was super excited because one, like football players, you get to lift weights. And I knew that these guys were big and strong because they lifted weights. I didn't know exactly what they were doing. I was half convinced that it was just osmosis, that like just being around the weights, like maybe rubbing like the barbell, like I'm going to rub this plate on me, maybe my arm will grow. Mm-hmm. Like I didn't know how they did it. And, so when I got to go play football, I was like, oh, sweet, we're going to do this weightlifting thing. And I went out and I had never played and ended up being pretty decent and going on and, trying to figure out the weight room with 70, 80, 100 kids and one coach who's reading a Time magazine without any internet or social media. My dad never lifted weights.
Mm-hmm. Nebraska program taped on the wall.
Oh, it was even worse than that. It was the Russian squat program. The 6x2, 6x3, 6x4, 6x5, 6x6, and then the 5x5, 4x4, 3x3, and then it was, I think, like 2 doubles and then like a few singles the next week. Like we did that at 80%. But like, as you know, beginner doesn't have an accurate 1RM. So like, we didn't know what the fuck we were doing. And that was, we went in and these, like a bunch of the older guys were really fucking strong. Like they all had, 500-pound deadlifts, 400-pound squats, 300-pound benches, because there was this thing, it was called like Panther Club or Sea King Club. There was some award where if you had a 500 deadlift, 400 bench, or 400 squat, 300 bench, and a 250-pound power clean, you got like a sticker on your home.
Yeah.
And then your name on the wall. And so that was like a big deal. And I was watching these guys and they were all big and strong. And it turned out that all of the guys that were big and strong were training there, but they were also training at Zengus's place. So then as I kind of came on and all of a sudden they started looking, these guys were getting ready to graduate and they would kind of like look for like younger guys that maybe had potential and be like, hey, I'm going to pick you up on Saturday. We're going to lift some weights. And they would take you over there. And that's how I ended up getting to Georgia's place.
At what point in high school did you know that you could play Division I?
Probably when I started getting football scholarships. I remember I started getting letters and filling them out, sending back. And I remember I started getting offers. And I remember showing them to my dad. And my dad's like, so wait a minute, they're going to let you go to college and play football and you're going to get a scholarship in this? And I was like, that's what this letter says. And I was like, I guess I must not be too shitty. And that was how it all happened. And then, I got recruited by SC, UCLA, Colorado, Nebraska, and Cal. And it really came down to what was the degree I wanted to hang on my wall. With the NIL now and these other fucking completely different world, right? Like playing in the NFL, like wasn't even like a daydream I had, right? Like obviously I like as a kid, got to go with Art Shell and go to the games and see these guys. These guys were larger than life. I mean, to see Howie Long in his 20s and, Lyle Alzado and those guys. I mean, these guys were fucking superhumans, right? Bo Jackson. I mean, it just, like there's no way I'd be able to do that.
Yeah.
Right. So it just didn't even kind of go into my brain. And when I went to college, I ended up going to Cal and I was like, yes, I got a scholarship. Like I get to go play football because I would have never got into Berkeley. I remember the valedictorian in my high school didn't get into Berkeley. With a 1600 SAT, they didn't get in.
Why'd you decide Cal?
Just because it was the degree I wanted to hang on my wall. Like I just didn't think I would ever like the NFL.
Did you know what degree though, or it was just who you wanted it from?
Yeah, that's who I wanted it from.
So you didn't really know what you wanted.
Oh, I knew exactly what I wanted to do.
What was that?
So when I took my recruiting trip to Cal, they had asked me what I was interested in, and my dad was a lawyer, so I told him I was interested in law. So they put me in an interview with a guy named Adrian Cragen, who had been a former dean of the Berkeley Law School, which was known as Bolt Hall at the time. And we sat down, and it turned out that he was a tax attorney for the big three movie, like the big three movie companies in Hollywood, and he knew the older lawyer that apprenticed my father. So as we sat down, he's like, what do you want to do? I'm like, I really think I'd like to be a lawyer. And he's like, well, here's the deal. If you want to be a lawyer, you need to learn to read and write to the best of your ability, because you cannot learn to think until you learn to read and to read and write. He's like, so if you want to be able to think, one, you have to be able to read well, and two, you have to be able to write exceptionally well, because only a fool speaks before he learns to read and write. And it's funny because Jordan Peterson has said something very similar to what Adrian Cragen said. And I always kind of laugh a little bit about that these two intelligent men came up with the same idea. So then he said to me, hey, there's a program, there's a a degree here at Berkeley called rhetoric. And it's like English philosophy kind of argumentative approach. And it's excellent for law school. I think that would be a great major for you. And I came home and I told my dad, and then he also had a scholarship called the Adrian Cragen Scholarship for a 4-year letterman that would get a scholarship to go to Berkeley Law School. So in my head, I was like, well, I just got to be a 4-year letterman. I got to be a rhetoric major. I got to get good LSATs, and I'll be able to get a scholarship to go to Berkeley Law School. And that was my path. You know, my brother was in law school at the time. My other brother went to law school. And so I was like, I'm going to go here. I'll get my degree. I'll play football. I'll go to law school, and then I'll get out. I'll take the bar, and I'll be an attorney. Mm-hmm. And that was the path that I had kind of like in my head. Yeah. Like, I'm going to use football as his vehicle for it.
So at what point did NFL aspirations come in?
You know, probably as I was playing against guys like Reagan Upshaw and Dwayne Clemens and going against a bunch of dudes that were, you know, high draft picks. All of a sudden you're playing against these guys one day, and then the next day they're in the NFL, and you're, you know, oh, excited. Like, hey, let's watch the game. You know, so-and-so is going to play. And they were out there killing people. Mm. And you're like, holy shit, they're like, these dudes are like beasting people. They didn't beat me that bad. I wonder if I could do that job. So that's kind of where it stemmed from. And then when I got there, like I said, that first day, you know, I showed up, and like I said, my brother said, you know, you got to look for somebody to fight. So same thing. I looked for the very first opportunity I had. And when I was playing left tackle, the left guard was a guy from Georgia who was big, strong dude, but like not great, like lateral agility. Kind of got beat on the outside, reached and grabbed this dude, pulled him down. And like, obviously we're just in shells and helmets and shit. And the guy got up, and the guy was kind of the ringleader. He was like, you know, the 8-year vet, defensive lineman, kind of like the, you know, the vocal guy on the team. And I was like, kind of like when I came in, I was like, all right, like, who's the guy I'm going to fight? Okay, like, that's the big fish. Like, that's the guy that holds the keys, right? I'm going to get this dude. And so I'm playing left tackle. I sit back, block my guy, and all of a sudden this like deal goes down. He kind of pulls him down. He gets up and he kicks the guy, or our guy who's on the ground. At which point, dude, I fucking blasted him in the side and knocked him on his back and literally just started dropping fucking bombs on him. Whole bench clearing brawl, the whole thing. Andy Reid comes over, breaks up the practice, throws me out of practice, makes this whole thing go on. And I was like, oh shit, I think I just got cut.
Yeah.
And I ended up coming back, and they got rid of all those old guys, and I was the starter.
I was going to say, what happened after that? So that happens and you're back in the locker room.
No, and then like we left, came back, and I was the starter, and then started that, and then I was the starter. And I ended up coming in, starting the season opener, and I ended up getting hurt in the season opener, rupturing my patellar tendon, and my career's over. Oh. So, you know, old Veteran Stadium was like painted concrete, right? Like, it was like shitty turf and stitched together. It looked like, you know, grandma's sewing needle. And I was playing right tackle, set back, step down, and my foot got caught in the seam. And I was trying, like, it was weird. Like, my foot got caught, like it was stuck. And I had this like split moment of like trying to get my foot out. And just when I got hit in the shoulder by the defensive lineman because we were stepping down. And all of a sudden I heard this pop. It sounded like I got shot from the fourth row, which if you've ever been to Philly is totally plausible. I looked down and I was like doing this, you know, like thinking I was looking for blood. And all I noticed was that my kneecap was sitting like 4 inches too high to the right and like too high. It was like sitting at a diagonal. And I was like, oh, fuck, that's bad. And it fucking hurt really bad. And so they carted me off. They x-rayed me. And the doctor's like, you know, your patellar tendon's over here. And then the guy said to me, you rupture your patellar tendon, mid-patellar rupture. You know, we've never had anybody ever come back from that injury. Your career's over. And he just walked away. And my mom and dad were there. And I saw like a tear go down my dad's face.
So what's going through your head?
Probably like, I guess that law school thing was probably a pretty good plan, like 3 years over, right? So they put me in surgery that night, stitched the knee back up. I was 3 weeks, it was completely locked. 3 weeks, you know, and then at like 3 months, they started kind of bending it a little, and I didn't walk for the first, you know, 3 months. And then they started letting me, you know, because what they have to do is they have to let the tendon heal. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, because if you have a long lever and it gets stretched too fast, you'll never get any, you know, quad extension. And so there was a deal where in my mind, I was like, I'm going to rehab for life. I don't want to walk with a limp. I'm not going to make this injury. I'm going to like get back to like zero. And then I'll probably get cut and I'll, you know, reboot my new plan, which is to try to get to law school. And, that was what I did. I mean, I was living in Philly. Everybody left. I didn't get cleared, so I had to stay. So I had no friends, no family, no girlfriend, no nothing to do. I was living in a little apartment in Center City in Rittenhouse. I would just go in the morning and rehab, and then I would eat lunch, and then I'd lift weights, and then I'd eat lunch again, and I'd take a nap, and then I'd go to this little gym around the corner, and I'd lift weights, and I trained like 3 or 4 times a day, just slept and ate, and ended up getting hooked up with Mauro De Pasquale for a supplement deal. Mauro did all my diet on the anabolic diet and started kind of coaching me a little bit. And he was like, you know what, like, let's get you big and strong, and then we're going to cut you back down, and really just taught me a ton that I know about dieting. And really that off season ended up getting big, like 326, but I was really fucking strong.
How were you training?
The most barbaric, old school, simple, heavy, absolute fucking blood and guts, Dorian Yates, like worse than his Birmingham gym. So old Veteran Stadium, they converted a broom closet into a gym. Like that was the weight room, was like this little like utility broom closet. Stuff was shit. And I would just show up there, and it was literally like, turn the music to 10. It was either going to be System of a Down, Metallica, or Slipknot. And we're going to just fucking go. And I'm going to see how strong I can get. And we used a lot of fat bars, a lot of trap bars. I mean, it was as archaic and as violent as I could ever hope for.
How old were you at the time?
23, 24 years old.
So you weren't losing rotational ability or any movement patterns while you were doing it?
I didn't give a fuck about any of that.
Yeah. Well, you probably didn't know either.
No, I didn't know any of this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know anything. I just knew that where I wanted to be was on the other side of being really strong.
Yeah.
The other thing too, which, this might be inherent within my brain, but like I said, I had nothing to do. And if I'm bored, I'll like find myself. I'm just not going to I'm not just going to fucking scroll on my phone. Like that didn't exist then anyway. I think I had like a flip phone. So, I ended up just going up and watching film, right? So I would get there, I'd like eat my lunch, and I said to the coach, I'm like, hey, can I get like a bunch of tape? I just want to watch tape. Like I want to like see, like, like start kind of understanding like what my technique is, what I need to do. So he gives me all these tapes, and I'm like watching it, and I'm like, dude, you're giving me like Trey Thomas and Jonathan Ogden. These guys are like 6'8", 360. Like I need like a 6'5", 300-pound white dude. Do you have that? And he's like, yeah. So he gave me like Jim Lachey, and he gave me, Jumbo Elliott and Tunch Jilkin, and he started giving me all these guys that were like looked like about my size, and I was like, okay, all right, I see how those guys are playing. And as I was going over watching this kind of with this cowboy clicker where you're going over and over again, and mind you, these are like VHS tapes, right? This is before they all went digital, right? Like putting these fucking tapes in. And as I'm watching over and over and over again, I realized like I had this like amazing epiphany, which was the person who is able to maintain their technique longest against, like let's say extraneous forces, right? Like either like speed, movement, gravity, or a person. The person that can maintain their technique longest and impose their will upon whatever it is wins. So like, for example, if I'm going to like offensive, like let's say I'm playing left guard and I'm going to pass pro this guy and he's in a 3 technique and I set back and, I'm in a great position. The defensive lineman is trying to use force. So he's going to ram his head into me. He's going to rip. He's going to use all these moves. He's going to try to startle me. He's going to sidestep. He's going to use all of these things to either get me to stop my feet or lose technique, rise up, do this. But if I can maintain my technique in the face of all of this and impose my will upon him longer, then I win. And it was like 1,000. It was like it was like 100%. Like, I mean, of the thousands of reps I watched, it was literally like the guy that maintains their technique the longest is one that wins. So part of the problem I had was I was in there lifting weights. I wasn't cleared to run and I couldn't play football. So I kind of thought about it. I'm like, okay, how does this translate to lifting weights? Well, why don't I make the weights like the extraneous factor? Right. So if I'm going to use load to challenge posture and position and my ability to maintain posture and position through full range of motion movements, and as the weight gets heavier and the speed and compensatory acceleration, I mean, that I've talked about this ad nauseum. I was 15, 16 years old and I'm in Zangus's garage and he's talking about his good friend, Fred Hatfield, which is funny because when I told Fred this story, Fred was mad because he felt George owed him money. And he's like, I can't believe he fucking told you about, I mean, the old guys, right? But he talked about compensatory acceleration as mechanical advantage increases, so does speed. So part of the reason that I was so explosive in my punch, and part of the reason that I was able to hit so much harder than everybody else, was that I wasn't trying to hit anybody. I was trying to put my hands through them. I was trying to drive my head, not to them, but through them. So when I would go hit a guy, I wasn't just trying to fit my hands. I was trying to literally drive my entire body and my hands through a point on the backside using compensatory acceleration. So as I got into the training space, to kind of like go back, I was like, well, if I don't have the ability to play football, then I'm going to use the barbells and the weights and the training and these, compound movements, whether it be a trap bar, deadlift, squat, bench, like whatever we're doing. I'm going to use those. And I know exactly what the position is and what my posture and position and what my technique needs to look like. And I'm not going to deviate it. And I'm going to fight against this weight. And if the weight gets heavy and it breaks my technique, then I'm going to back the weight down and we're going to start again. And I started using that kind of understanding of training where I'm going to use heavy ass weights to challenge posture and position through full range of motion movements. And I'm going to understand technique. Like we were talking about, like foot position, right? Toes forward. I knew that when I put my big toe on the ground and rotated this way, I could create more internal hip torque and I could get off the ball faster. I knew that the guys that were too inflexible that played here, when they set back, their next step was a slide and they ended up stepping in the bucket and creating short corners. So I knew that if I went this way and set back, the one that stays square the longest ends up doing the best. So football is just about angles, right? If this guy's here in a 3 and this guy's here, he wants to get me here so he can go here. So it's just a little bit of like, and also from the boxing too, in boxing, 2/3 inside out. Never go nose to nose with a guy. Same playing football. It's funny, Fry's texted me and I said, how you doing? He goes, 2/3 inside out. As long as you say 2/3 inside out and you don't ever get even, when as an offensive lineman, if you get even with a defensive lineman, he has a 2-way go. If I'm always protecting my inside, if he comes inside on me, we mesh. If he goes outside, I have the ability to be able to move because I'm always in great position. So for me too, I have a unusual skill set that not many in the world had, which was hand speed. So I think it was from when I was a kid doing all the boxing stuff and like the speed bags and the focus mitts. My hands were just faster. I remember I ran into Michael Strahan at a club in New York when I was playing. We were up there in the off season. We used to go up on Monday nights and go up and go hang out in New York on occasion. And I ran into Strahan and he was like, man, every time they go scouting report about you, fucking don't let this guy get his hands on you, right? Hands are fast, right? This dude's got fast hands. And I played against a guy named Keith Hamilton, who's probably one of the best players I ever played against, who's not in the Hall of Fame. And which is ironic seeing as I'm here for Hall of Fame weekend. Not that I want to give history because I don't know when this thing's going to come out. But he was like, Hammer respected no one and respected you for the fact that like the intensity at which you played was always high. The consistent was effort. You were always in shape. So, I mean, there were things that I could control. I could control my conditioning. I could control my flexibility. I could control my technique. I can control my knowledge, like my understanding of the game, the granular level of like what the defense was and what was this. I mean, I could like, those are the variables I could control. The variables you can't control are when all of a sudden you line up and you go live and the guy does something. But I knew that as long as I maintained posture position as I moved through space and I could enforce my will upon them, then I was in a great position to consistently win and do my job. And I was able to do that with a ton of precision and accuracy and very consistent in how I did it.
The hand speed is something that one of the trips that Louie and I made to, I think it was Green Bay, there was a lineman at the time, I don't remember the names, and it looked like Norm from Cheers. I swear to God.
Okay, you drove a beer truck in the offseason?
I'm so confused. And I think Ken Johnson was the strength coach at the time. And they had, I believe it was a touch punch,
Yeah.
And he said, watch this. He goes over and puts that thing on there and you're like, what in the hell?
Yeah.
It says it doesn't matter. Nobody can get around him because he slaps the shit out of everybody and he controls everything that they do.
Yep.
I've never seen anything like that before in my life.
Yeah.
It was like, this is the NFL. I get it.
Well, so also like when you work with people, like I worked with Fries this year, a big part of this deal was figuring out like what makes him him. Mm-hmm. So when you look at football players, everybody has that one little thing that's like, I call it the wheelhouse. This is my wheelhouse. This is who I am. Like when this thing goes bad, like this is what I lean into. And so you have to be able to establish it and lean into it and make sure that that is highly, highly trained. One of the things with CrossFit is they were like, oh, all you should do is your weaknesses. And I was like, no. Yeah. right? Like, should you work on your weaknesses? Yes, but never at the expense of who you are and what makes you you. And I knew for me, I was super flexible. So I had the ability to be able to generate force at a position at parallel, if not below. I'll show you pictures. I'm in my stance and like my hips are below parallel and my head is up, because a lot of guys would get into a stance and their backs are flat and they couldn't see what was happening. Right? Like, I wanted to be able to see everything, and I was flexible enough and I had the athleticism to be able to play in that position and stay low. And also I was like a 306, 300 pound 8 guy. I was not a 360 monster. So I was like one of the smaller, more athletic guys, which I think is funny when I tell people that. I remember we were in the preseason or early in the season when I had to play against Buffalo, and I had to go against Ted Johnson, who they listed the program at about 365, but Ted was every bit of about 420. And I remember coming off the ball and hitting him with everything I could. And like, I felt like I got him to take one step back, and then he stopped and we all stopped. And then he took a step forward and he started leaning on me this way. And I remember like feeling my back like it was going to compress. And I had this like split second, like survival instinct of like, all right, either this dude's going to blow my back out or I'm just going to fucking roll him up. So I just went down and cut him. And when I cut him, he wasn't moving fast enough. So he just bent his knees and he dropped his knee drop on me. So I got fucking 400 pounds knee dropped on my side. That was extremely humbling. Yeah. And I remember when I got up, he's like, don't cut me again. And I was like, well, don't try to fucking break my back. And he was deal. And so I played against Ted when, he went to Chicago and Keith Traylor and those guys. And I remember we like looked about him and he was like, I'm like, I remember. Yeah. We'll keep it up, but don't fucking try to like fucking bench press me and snap me like a taco shell. But that skill set of being able to punch. So in boxing, really just in fighting in life, right? The first meaningful touch is usually the one that wins. So for me, I was always very focused as when I set, when I move, that I was always going to have the first meaningful touch. And then based upon that meaningful touch, I was never going to do it. And I also had another skill set where I could actually go from a position, uncoil my hips, punch, and then sink back down. That was one of those things that I could do. And then when people would watch me do it, they would try to do it. And the coach would be like, don't do that. You'll get cut. Like there's no, like very few people can do that. This guy can do it. Like Will Shields had things that he could do that I couldn't do. Mm-hmm. He had this, when I played with Will at the Chiefs, he had this incredible move we used to call the elephant trunk, where he would set and he would like dead arm a guy here. And the guy would feel like oh man, I got him beat. And then Will would like latch and then bring it up and he would bait dudes with it. You watch, a lot of like high level jiu-jitsu guys, like Gordon Ryan kind of has it a little bit where he kind of like dead arms and kind of puts his shoulder out and he tries to get people to suck in. And then he kind of does like a pull by, and he does like back grabs off of it. And he's able to kind of like do some fun stuff of baiting people. Very similar move. But, Willie Rofe, who I played with, and Brian Waters had one where he would pull, let the guy beat in front of him, and then do this like kind of belly slap thing and like shoot the guy backwards. I remember the first time I saw that, I was like, holy shit. Like, that works? Like, that's incredible. Like, so I think what people forget is that when you're talking about the best guys in the world, people have certain skill sets that make them them. And you can like, and when young guys come in, they see these older guys, these vets do this. And like, like you got to be really conscious of like, like, hey, that's a very unique thing that this guy can do. I don't know if you're going to be able to do it. You should probably, understand it or try it. But like when it goes back to being able to develop a game, the basics are the basics. You have to understand angles. You got to be able to understand the plays. You got to get off on the ball. You got to be able to, be able to move through space, and you have to be able to first meaningful touch. And then like really the intangible that nobody talks about is violence. So when somebody asked me one time, they're like, oh man, did you really, with football and this? And I was like, I didn't really ever touch a ball. I wasn't really, we were wearing football equipment, but was I really a football player, or was I just a master of violence? Yeah. And so that's what I quantified my job as, is that I was really good at, or I was skilled at managing violence and being very focused with violence, and almost getting like a calm demeanor. Like I used to call it the eye of the storm, right? There's 100,000 people around you. You're in this. Everything's going fucking nuts, and you don't hear a pin drop. And you're not like, I'm not nervous. I'm just literally focused. Like, I'm going to hurt this dude. And like, not in like an angry, like this kind of way, like a weird, quiet, the serial killer going in and hacking somebody up and then going and have let me make a sandwich. Like just that level of like, calmness. And I used to always think about like things are always calmest in the eye of the storm, and just being very focused on what you do. And oddly enough, there's nowhere else in the world that I've ever found it. The other day when I went to Jits, we were rolling. I got to do like a nice 10-minute round, and like that's about as close as I've been. You know, like to be able to like where you don't have to think, you just get to move, you get to use your body. You're trying to like engage another person. You know, these guys are way more skilled than me, but like, you know, in football, like everybody's blade was sharp. It just came down to who wanted it more.
So at a time when everything slows down, but still it's externally fast.
Yeah. So every game for me, everything moved in slow motion.
Yeah.
Like it's the weirdest thing. Like people ask me like, oh, you know, they talk about the speed. Oh my, I was on the sideline, the speed. I'm like, I used to see this shit in slow motion. Like I'd see it before it happened. Like the ability to be able to like, you know, did you ever see like the love of the game, you know, with the pitching where he's like clear the mechanism and then everything goes this and it goes same thing. Like that is, you know, I was listening to an interview with Michael Schumacher, you know, the racer. You know, he was talking about the faster he drove, the slower things got, you know, because people are like, how are you able to handle these things? He's like, I saw everything in slow motion. Same thing happened.
It's just a higher stress environment. You know how to manipulate and manage that environment.
They don't know if it's learned or it's genetic. So years ago, I was approached. So we were working with a bunch of like NSW guys, and this was I living in Newport Beach, and they were coming up from Coronado because they were going into this study for all these scans at this place called the Brain Research Center in Newport. And what they were trying to figure out is if there was something like called operator brain.
Yeah.
Right, because what they were going to do is figure out if there was like a signature of all of the active SEALs, and then when they would go to selection, they would just pre-screen the guys and be like, well, these guys don't have the signature, they're not going to make it, so we're just going to pre-screen for these guys. So that was the study. And after about the third time those guys came in, I was like, I want to go. So I went over there and I got scanned. And the guy's like, oh, yeah, no, your brain totally works like this. And so when we went in to do the test, he's like, he said to me, he's like, is there ever a time where you're playing and things slow down? And I was like, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. He's like, can you get there? I was like, 100%. I took a deep breath and I like kind of like focused and like literally 3 breaths. And he's like, oh shit, there it is. And then he saw the peak in it. And then he had my dad and my brothers come in, and my dad and my brothers couldn't do it either.
Well, that's interesting because when I'll speak to top lifters, if they're doing a maximal attempt, right? If I'm doing a maximal attempt and I'm straining, I feel everything. I know the tension. It feels slow. I know exactly what I need to move or change to be able to keep the tension where I need the tension. Mm-hmm. Half the guys I'll speak to, if I ask them to explain everything from their setup all the way through, they can explain everything, like exactly where the tension's supposed to be. If the tension isn't as great as what it's supposed to be, what they need to shift to be able to make it happen, to be able to go down there. The other half, it's just lifting the weight. It's just the straining. It's just black. There's nothing in there, which is kind of the same thing that we're talking about. Yeah. To one group, myself would be in that group, it feels like an eternity. Like there's not even an eternity. It's just a void of time, right? Where I can process everything. All of it, you know, from the feelings and all the other stuff. The other group is just like black. Yeah. But to have the quality of the one to be able to know what you have to shift, pivot, and change, you know, throughout that time.
And be able to do it in real time.
In real time. It's a different thing.
Yeah, very different.
And you can't just turn it on and off. It will. Well, you can if the load, it's got to have the right chaos load environment. All that has
chaos
to be.
Is like, you know, like there has to be chaos.
Chaos, yeah.
So I talked to actually one of our young guys, Philippe, about this the other day. If in training, if your best rounds are in training, that's a problem. Right, like your best rounds have to be, you know, when the lights are on you, when you're wearing a fresh rash guard and you're going out there to fight at the UFC Fight Pass or, you know, ADCC, you know, like whatever it is, you're like, you want to be on the biggest stage against the best guy with the lights on. And in that moment, you have to be able to like hear this call to greatness, and you have to be able to go out and do all of the things that you know that you can, all the training, all the people that believed you, all of that stuff, you know, whether it go back to your mom and dad, your aunts, whatever it is,
yeah.
You have to carry that on your back and go out there and be the person that we know you can be. This happened all the time in football, right? Guys were great practice players, right? This guy looks great in practice, not bad. This guy's going to play great. All of a sudden you put the pads on, the intensity goes up, the lights go on, and all of a sudden they can't overreach. So it's like they were in 5th gear in practice, and now all of a sudden you go out and you find that 6th gear. And that was the difference between the good and the greats, especially in football. They had the ability to elevate the game when it really mattered. And they move at a speed. I remember as fast as I moved in practice was never as fast as I could move in the game. Like all of a sudden you're watching stuff. I remember I was playing against, I can't remember the team, but I was playing against a 3 technique, and I fucking bowed this dude up, and the running back fell right behind me. And as the guy was driving me back, I knew something was behind me, and I lifted my leg and I clearly stepped over him like this. And then as the guy came forward, he ended up getting dumped. I dumped the defensive lineman on the running back. So we're watching on film, and my coach is like, how the fuck did you know that guy was behind you? And I was like, I didn't. He's like, how did you know to step over him? I'm like, I don't know, maybe the spider sense, I don't know. But like you just end up developing a certain skill set. And a big part of the NFL too is survival. Like you have to make sure that you do everything right. And like all of a sudden you get into a place or a position, or you're here and you know where the ball's going, you're going to fucking end up in the meat grinder. So there's a lot of stuff where like, don't get stuck in the hole, keep your feet moving, go drive. You watch a lot of guys hit and they go, they get thrown or something. They just keep going because you just don't want to be in the meat grinder.
Well, that's one of the things I was going to ask is how did you go from a rookie mindset to a veteran mindset? A lot of things play into this because in college, everything's laid out for you, right?
What do you mean?
The timeline. Like you got to be here at X time, you got to be here at X time. Then now you're in the pros. It's kind of laid out, but it's not, right? And now you're at a different level. So there's a rookie mindset to where if you're too aggressive too much, you're done. There's got to be a pivot, to where it has to be because you want to play, right? And you don't want to get cut, but at a certain time you want to keep playing and increase the longevity of how long you can play. I never thought like this is a massive mistake on my part. Whenever, you probably see people, if I could go back and tell my younger self that shit. I never thought about longevity. I never thought about like, hey, I should probably do this if I want to play a little bit longer on the end. I was literally like, fucking just go, hammer down. Let's figure it wasn't something I could comprehend. I also like never really imagined myself being 40. I never really imagined myself being 30. I remember when I turned 30, I was like, fuck, I made it to 30. I remember when I turned 40 and I was like, I can't believe I'm fucking 40. Like I just never really thought about like, now, you got kids, you're a little bit older, like you're like, oh, all right, like aging parents and that. And you're like, oh shit. Like, my mom's in her 80s. I'm like, is that how long we live here? Yeah. Like, that's a weird thing. Like I didn't necessarily think about that when I was, I think because of social media and the internet and like the rise of whatever this stuff is, like people, like I went to a conference last year and there was for a deal con, he had this Eterna deal on like longevity. And the guy that got up, who was the geneticist, was like, our genes will make you to 120 years old. As long as we can beat all-cause mortality and you don't die of like cancer or heart attack or something. So we started going through all the levers. Like if you can get in a sauna for, 4 times a week for, maybe 70 total minutes at a temperature over 174 degrees to activate heat shock proteins, your chance of a heart attack go pretty low. You add some aerobic work in there, don't eat like an asshole, keep your body weight and, like body fat in check and carry a bunch of muscle. I mean, all of these like determining factors, like these like things, like this thing starts getting mitigated. That his deal was like, we just have to figure out all-cause mortality. That's kind of where we got really back into like looking at the gut, because your resilience to avoid sickness and illness and a lot of these things really comes down to how robust your microbiome is. Like what does gut diversity look like? What does bifidobacteria look like? Like how robust are you? So when I got my microbiome done, like my score was like in like I think high 7s, 8s in terms of diversity, which like the average American's in the 4s. So I was like a low-level Hadza. Or like, a Midwest farmer, let's say, had bifidobacteria, which I think less than 2% of this country has any usable bifidobacteria based on Dr. Hazen's research. So, I mean, that's like an indicator, but I also never got COVID. Like I was exposed hundreds of times. And like, even when she tested my stool, like I had never been exposed. She's like, you have 0 of this thing. So how robust you are is a great indicator of how durable and how healthy you'll be over a long period of time. Yeah. Are there genetic components to this? Probably. Are there a lot of other factors? I mean, who knows what all the factors to play into it? But you don't get to do my job
that I got to do for almost, 10 years, 9 if you count the year I got hurt. But, without having a certain genetic or just some gifts that somebody gave you. And, like I said, I squatted 610 when I was 19, benched 500. I think my best was 535 for a pretty good triple. I was able to handle, 180 pound dumbbells, flat bench for, 12 reps. And, I think it's funny. I saw a podcast where these guys were talking about lifting heavy weights. Every Friday of the season, I benched 405. So at the beginning of the season and when, the first quarter of the season, 1 through 4, it was usually between 5, 6, 7 reps. And then every Friday, because it was usually Friday where my hands stopped hurting, I would come in and I would call it cliffhanger, where as long as I got 1 rep, I was good.
Yeah.
Right. So like I might get like 5 or 6 or 7, and then it might be like a 4, and then like a triple, and then I might get 5 or a kind of go back and forth. And then by the end of the season, last quarter season in the playoffs, I would just come in and like, I'm going to do, 315, 365, and I'm going to bring 405 real down control, pop up. 1 is all I need. And so I always kept up this like high level of physical readiness. And I'd never subscribed to the idea of like light reps and volume. Oh, I'm just going to go light today. And I was like, I would rather like cut volume and keep intensity high than cut intensity and do a bunch of fucking junk volume. And when somebody asked me about it, I'm like, I see it in my punch. If you were just asked me to do like sets of like 10 and 15 and do, 225 for a few reps and just get a pump, like that doesn't do anything for my central nervous system, my CNS. When I get in my stance and I go from here to here, like I feel that, and light weights didn't do that for me. So we did it in the squat, we did it in the pulls. I remember when I was, first time I remember I was talking to John Meadows, we were on the phone and we were talking about some training stuff, and he was like, hey, I'm going to send you a training program. I just want you to hit some numbers just to kind of see. So I went in there, and I think I had my best, so I never pulled a deadlift off the ground my entire NFL career. I just did RDLs. And I think I RDL'd, I know I did, 585 for a set of 6, no reps, overhand. I could do more with the reps, but I was like, you know what, like I need to have strong hands. So I just didn't use a ton of reps, no belt. And I remember John sent me the program, and I think I shot him like a video, and he was like, I think it was like 12s on RDLs. And I think I went up and I did like 3 sets of 12 with like 405, and I sent it to him. He like was like, he's like, it was funny. And then I was on a podcast with him, and he's like, I saw this dude do 12 reps for 3 sets of 12 at 405 on RDL. And I was like, is that good? I like, that's, so he was like, yeah, that's really fucking strong, but I also have like hamstrings that look like biceps that look like steel cables. And it's probably like physically why I was able to do it. So, but like there was a difference in my training philosophy than what most people were doing. And like, the strength coaches were great. The strength coaches were like, you're a big, strong fucking dude. Like, what are you doing? And then we would talk about it, and they'd be like, I'm not going to impose my will. You're switched on. Let's just do it. Yeah. And so I had great strength coaches with, Coach Hurd and Mike Wolf and Tom Canavy, and those guys were just incredible strength coaches. I remember when I went to the Patriots, I went in there and they had all these bitchin' Eleco plates, and I was like, oh shit. So I went and got my lifting shiz, and I came in and I was doing some like cleans and like was doing some like front squats and shit. And like, as soon as the bar dropped, the strength coach, Mike, with a W, not Walensky, Polish name, I'm going to mess it up, but he comes running out of his office because he hadn't heard anybody drop bumper plates in so long. And he was like, are you going to use those? Because they had every piece of equipment for the lower body, right? Mm-hmm. They had anything. Like, if you want to train your legs, well, we got something for you. And I chose to go over and lift. I mean, he had these like bitchin' like Eleco bars that were all zzz, like, I mean, he had really nice shit. And I was like, fuck, let's, I'm going to use it. Yeah, let's use it. He was ecstatic. He's like, is there anything else you want to use? Funny part was they wouldn't if you put more than 405 on the bar, you had to do a board press, because they didn't want anybody bringing 405 to their chest. And I was like, so when I loaded on 405, I slapped that plate. He came sprinting out. I was like, oh, you got a board and this, and we got to have like, 3 spotters. And I was like, it's 405. Like, this isn't where I'm going. Like, this is like a way station onto a heavier weight. And he, like, when all of a sudden, he watched me like drive it pretty good. And it was like, and I want to say it was like a 3 board. Mm-hmm. I brought that thing down. It was like, boom, and threw it up and, for a couple reps, and then racked it. And I went to go put more weight on, and he was like, no, we don't, like you're good. Like, don't Like, so as a professional strength coach, especially in the NFL, those guys are managing injury more than they are human performance. Like you showed up, like I showed up and I played, and the training for me and part of the thing was not that, the NFL is different today. Like those strength coaches and those facilities, I mean, are just incredible. I left every offseason and went and trained down in Tampa with Rafael Ruiz because Raf was, I felt, the best training for me. And every year I'd come back, they'd be like, hey, so-and-so made 100% of his workouts and he's looking great. And I'd be like, great. Give me all your fucking testing. Let's do the conditioning test. Let's do everything. I'll win fucking everything. And I'll still be like, so it really came down to, one, I wasn't lazy. Two, I liked to work. And, I wanted to be in good shape because I'm a little vain.
Well, at the NFL too, the majority, if not all the players, they're developed. That's why they're there. They just kind of need topped off on the things that fall. Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know, I was watching this morning, that big dude who's in Tampa that was like in the 475, that they drafted. They were just having him walk because they're trying to get him under 400 pounds. So the outcomes for those guys over 400 pounds are not good. And so there might be blood markers in this, but like, they spend a lot of money now, and they've really fine-tuned it to where, these guys are getting paid the money and people aren't getting hurt and they're not dying. I mean, the Corey Stringer thing, there's just, the NFL was extremely cavalier, and there was a lot of wild cowboy shit back in the day. I mean, just in terms of like pills and like, painkillers and, like the story, I always love the story. One of the guys from Green Bay told me that they were at like a big dinner, and Brett Favre was going around, and I don't mean to tell the guy's business, but it was like, we'll just say, was going around and bummed some pills and, ended up getting sick and throwing them up, and he watched him picking them out of the vomit. Like, that's some fucking, that's some rock star shit, man. But that was the game. I mean, after a game, you get on, they give you a sandwich and 2 beers, and the coach, the trainers would come by and they would put pills in these little white boxes and they kind of shake them, and we called them rattlers because it sounded like a rattlesnake. And certain guys are big pill guys. Yeah. And I never was. I mean, did I say I never took them? No, I can't say I never did, because I had some surgeries and, whatever. But for the most part, I was never a big pill guy. But I've also, and I mean, shit, it's the internet now. Everybody says everything. But I also feel like the guys that took the most amount of pills tended to be the guys that had the most amount of problems after football. Yeah. And, there's definitely a connection with like the opiates and the blood-brain barrier and this, and, especially gut, dysbiosis. And like, there's definitely all the same pain receptor sites in the gut or in the brain. And I think that they, that stuff moves across the blood-brain barrier, whether or not they say it or it doesn't. I think that there's some things that it does in terms of breaking it down that ends up having some negative outcomes. Did you go through any identity crisis after the football was over? I have such a fear of failure that when my career ended and I was on the couch, I mean, I ended up getting hurt in that last preseason game, kind of crunched my knee, and it was fucked up. And I ended up getting released, and they were like, hey, we're going to release you today, but we're going to re-sign you tomorrow. We got to make a roster move, so just hang out and we'll re-sign you tomorrow. Okay. And then they made me go back to the physical. And the guy looked at my knee and he's like, dude, what happened? I'm like, I don't know. I sheared off a piece of bone. I got stuck in the joint and they didn't re-sign me. So I went home and had surgery. And as I was rehabbing on the couch, that's when Glassman called me about doing CrossFit Football. And, did I make the right decision? I think about that all the time. Instead of, did I do what you did and been like, go fuck yourself. I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to finish filling out these law school applications and go be an attorney. And we would have never heard of me. You would have never known who John Welbourn was outside of just some guy that played football. We wouldn't be here in this conversation. Power, I think, wouldn't have existed. CrossFit Football wouldn't have existed. And and that was kind of the career path I was into. And then when Glassman, asked me about CrossFit Football, he made an interesting point. He said, I'd like for you to help us come develop our technology and how to train athletes. And I had never thought about training as a technology. The training was the system to make, the SAID principle, right? Specific adaptation and post demands. Like, I looked at this very science-based, right? Like, it's very organic, right? Like, if these are the adaptations I want, I know how to drive adaptation, and I know what the intended outcome. So all these people, I think they look at everything all fucked up in reverse, right? I look at like, what's the intended outcome? What am I trying to do? And then I have to be able to go back. So the SAID principle, specific adaptation to impose demands. Like, I knew what the outcome was, and I knew how to drive outcome. And I knew exactly what it was because I had this incredible training ground, like this fielding ground.
right? I knew what I could do in the weight room, and then I could go out and do this stuff. And the wild part is I watched guys for years who were really fucking strong in the weight room that couldn't translate it onto the field. And I saw other guys that couldn't fucking lift their dicks go out and absolutely destroy guys on the field. And it came down to, one, your ability to first meaningful touch. Could I get off on the ball? Was I explosive? Did I have flexibility? Could I move? Did I have that internal fuck you to be able to shift into that gear to hit? And, you know, am I a good athlete? Can I move through space? You know, one of the one of the most proud things about Power Athlete was I created my own definition of athleticism, the ability to seamlessly and effortlessly combine primal movement patterns through space to accomplish a known or novel task. And that is like your ability, primal patterns, you know, X, Y, and Z axis. Really, that's all your lower body can do, right? You can hinge, you can step, or you can step up. And so what we know as athleticism is just the seamless and effortlessly combining X, Y, and Z axis through space to accomplish a known or novel task. And it felt very basic to me. And so I knew what that was and what I needed to do to be able to execute my job. And then I just had to be strong enough, explosive enough, work enough transverse, rotation, frontal plane, sagittal, you know, all these sagittal warriors that just go up and back. You know, like football's not played like that. You have to understand angles, and you have to be able to get off the ball. And then you have to have this intangible, which is like, I have no qualms about trying to put my fucking head through you and break you in half. And then I'm going to do it for 69 more times over 3 hours in front of millions of people. And I'm going to do it with no emotion. You know, the guys that are beating their chest, screaming and yelling, those guys that are like, that wasn't me. I was always like, you know, I'm looking for the dude who's quiet in the corner, like, you know, Will Shields sleeping before the game. That's the guy I'm worried about, not the guy that's screaming and yelling, you know. I'm sure you saw this in powerlifting. You know, the guy's over there beating his head into the bar and like, this guy's going to bomb. The guy that's over there calmly, like drinking a coffee, like wrapping himself up, who gets up and you're like, this dude's going to fucking explode. And that's why, you know, you kind of start understanding, you were talking about like that transition between a young guy and an old guy. If we go back a few minutes. But I had a very interesting moment with that, because I came in and I started as a rookie, get hurt, thought my career was finished. And as I'm training, they signed John Runyon, you know, as right tackle for 10 years. You know, he signed like a $40 million deal. I'm like, I guess I'm not playing right tackle. So I go into training camp and I'm like the third string left tackle. I'm so far down on the depth chart that I was on the second page. That's how fucking they'd forgotten about me, right? They were like, didn't even remember me. So I'm out there playing, and I'm playing pretty good. Like everything's going well. Like I'm third string. Like I'm like, you know, basically calling my dad, my agent, being like, I'm going to get cut. Like there's no way. They don't keep us third string left tackle. And my dad's like, just keep playing, right? You never know what's going to happen. So Runyon gets hurt. He like went to like push a guy in a weird way, and he ends up tearing like an intercostal, like in his rib, which is super painful if you've ever done that. And they put him on, like, you know, he's in the training table, like he's in the ice chest, right? Like he's off the field. Like they're going to have to rehab this. So they had a guy who was his backup that was playing, and he started to have a rough go of it. You know, one of the things happens in the NFL, if the starter gets hurt, the backup comes in and the backup doesn't like assert dominance right away. It's like a fucking blood in the water, and those guys see it, and then they start kind of like jumping on that dude. So that guy was struggling a little bit. And we were in a drill, and he ended up like not doing well. And just by chance, Andy Reid looks over at me and he goes, didn't you used to play, like I was standing kind of like offensive line. He like walks over and he goes, didn't you used to play right tackle for us? And I was like, yeah, I started for you, season opener. He's like, go play right tackle for us. That guy's getting fucking murdered. And I was like, all right. So I went out there and I was like, all right, let's see how this goes. And I'd been playing left tackle, you know, and I ended up setting back and doing pretty well, and ended up working into the starting position at right tackle while Runyon was hurt. And then we go to the first preseason game. It was against Cleveland. And Courtney Brown had been the first round draft pick that year, you know, so he's like the number one guy, you know, first pick in the draft. So this is his first game. All the media's there to see him. And he's going against some second year, you know, third string left tackle who's playing right tackle who got injured in a rookie 4th round draft pick. And I went out and played pretty well against him. I mean, obviously he was a rookie, he probably didn't know what he was doing, but I went out and I played well. You know, we played like the first, you know, I think we played the first quarter and a half. Maybe we played a little bit more just to kind of give us a little bit of run. And I ended up playing pretty well. So after the game, we come walking in, and there's like 100 reporters around my locker, you know, because you have your names up and like, you know, we're in Cleveland. And damn, it's already 2 hours. Fuck, this is, I was like, what are we going to talk about? So there's all these reporters around my locker, and I go and like walk over, and they're like jam this microphone in my face, and they were like, do you think that the Eagles made a mistake paying Runyon all that money when obviously you can do this job? And I like took a second, and I was like, have you seen John Runyon? He's like 6'8", 340. The guy's a monster. Like I'd pay this guy $10 million. He's a beast. And all these guys were like, whoo, and they just all walked away. And they all walked away, and the GM, Tom Modrak, was standing right there when they all walked away, and he was like, man, you diffused that really well, thank you.
Yeah, that rhetoric degree came.
Yeah. He's like this skilled rhetorician, which if you go to my bio on social media, I have this modern rhetorician deal, which is kind of like, it's just, nobody else has it, and people ask me about it a bunch, but like this modern rhetorician, like, being skilled with language.
Yeah.
Right. And so I said the right thing. So then we go back, we leave there, we fly home, we have the day off, then we come back and we get back into practice, and Runyon's back in, and, he's like, not injured anymore. He's playing this, and I'm playing backup right tackle. So we're in a drill. Everything's kind of going live bullets. Everybody's, right in the fight of camp. It's all, super emotional. It's fucking hot, like humid. It's terrible. We're in Lehigh, Pennsylvania, and we're, in these 2 hours, 2-a-days, 3 hours just banging. And, the left guard had got drafted in the 3rd round ahead of me my year. He's in his 2nd year, was struggling a little bit, having some confidence issues. He came in, he made the all rookie team, started 16 games, and, came in, and he was getting overcoached. So like sometimes with young guys, coaches can give them too much information. And I think for people like, and I do this with, when I coach people too, I give them one cue. Like, I hate this machine gun cueing when all of a sudden you're like, and you're throwing a million things because people don't hear anything. I'm like, let's fix one thing. Once you fix one thing, I'll give you another thing. And if you can't fix the first one, we're just going to stay there. So I think the problem is that the coach was giving him just too much information, just giving him too much, and he was just struggling. So he ends up getting beat, and in like a inside run drill, like gets shot inside, and the defensive lineman didn't finish the back, but like bowed up and then was like going crazy, and the defense was just going nuts. So they go over and they're like, same play on 2. Same exact thing happens. And all of a sudden, but this time the guy gets blown up and driven back into the running back. And then of course it's, everybody's going crazy, nuts. And Andy got pissed. And I had just so happened when this came in, we had just got done. So I went and got a drink of water, and then I walked back, and I was standing right there watching, and he looked over at me and he was like, Welbourn, go play left guard. I was like, okay. So I went on and I was tapped the dude, and I was like, hey man, they want me to play left guard. So he like storms out, and they look at me and they're like, same play on 2. And so I just watched this 2 times before, and I'm like, okay, I know exactly what he's going to do. I know exactly what's going to happen. So I can either take this moment to be my moment, or just get blown up and then get fucking lost back in the shuffle and go into anonymity. And so I got down in my stance. I knew what the cadence was. I got off on the ball like perfectly, even just a hair early, like not enough to be offsides, but I got off the ball like with impeccable timing. Got off, the guy comes up, I hit the dude, drive him, he goes step, and I literally knock him down. The running back comes right off of me, and we run for a touchdown. And then all of a sudden the horn blows, boop, and that was the end of the drill. And everybody gets up, everybody's super stoked. The defense is not riled. We go over, and we got to go to the next period, which is 11 man pass. So we go over, everybody's all lined up. I'm playing, that guy goes back in, it was just a small little moonlight for me. So I go back, and I'm standing right there, and I go back, get a drink of water, come back in, I'm standing there going. And all of a sudden that guy gets hit with a little shimmy shake, little swim move, and the defensive lineman runs by, putting his finger in the air, screaming at the quarterback. And Andy goes nuts and starts yelling at the left guard, what to get your fucking head out of your ass. And so gives him another play. He gets bull rushed back into the quarterback. And at that 3rd one, he looks at me and he goes, Welbourn, go play left guard. Now I play tackle. If you play tackle in the NFL, playing guard in the NFL is pretty easy, right? Like, you got a wide 5, a 7, a 9. You're out there fucking one-on-one pass proing these like fucking, 99 level wizards is what I call them. They might just have like a hat. They're out there, you're playing against Bruce Smith type guys, which I got a good Bruce Smith story, I'll tell you. And so I get in my stance, he's playing a 3, which to me, if you're a tackle and a guy, I can reach out and touch you, like that's pretty easy. Just backing over and set my hands and like, let's get into the fight. And ended up stoning the dude. And we ended up throwing passes, no pressures, everything looked good. And then blew up and he walked over and said, this is permanent. You're the starting left guard. And I started there for the next 4 years.
So what's the takeaway?
I
think you're done.
Well,
I mean, you're calling your dad.
Yeah.
And saying, I think I'm going to get cut. But then you raised up when the opportunity arose.
Yeah. So I've been very fortunate in my life to have pivotal moments where I've been put in a situation where greatness was the opportunity. All I had to do was just keep going. You know, all the self-doubts and all this, just one more step. Just keep going and do a good job. Do what you're supposed to do. Work hard. Do all the little things that you can. Don't stop. You know, sometimes it's hard. You know, I mean, like it would have been easy just to be like, fuck these people. You know, I'm not getting my chance. They're screwing me, whatever. And like, just keep playing. Like, just keep, don't take
Yeah, but sometimes they can work against you too. So your last injury that put you out, in your head, you're thinking, I can come back from this.
Well, that was really interesting. So that wasn't the case.
Yeah.
So I ended up, it was weird. I ended up, and I understand what happened now. I didn't understand what happened then. So a lifetime of accumulation of injuries and basically using my body like a battering ram.
Yeah.
There's some physiological things that happen. And I've been very fortunate to work with a guy named Craig Bueller, who has something called the AMIT method. He's activation muscle integration technique, which is in Kaysville, Utah. He worked with like John Stockton and Karl Malone. And Dr. Bueller and I have worked together for a number of years. He's the guy that worked with Odell Beckham Jr. to, bring him back to play in the Super Bowl when he was missing an ACL. He's the guy I sent Fries to when Fries was having problems, couldn't get into position. He just was out there. I just saw Dr. Bueller recently. But what happens to a lot of athletes, and I heard this once, it was Hugh Douglas and Rick Burkholder. Rick Burkholder was the head trainer for the Eagles. He's at the Chiefs now. Hugh Douglas was their defensive end. He was we were getting our ankles taped, and he said to Rick, he goes, man, you know, a dude can play. And then all of a sudden one day he can't play and his career just kind of is over. And Rick was like, oh yeah. And he was going through, this guy was like a player, something happened and this guy wasn't a player. And he's like, it's like a light turns off. And I always thought that was really interesting. I was like, I wonder if that's what will happen to me. If like one day I could do it and then the next day I couldn't. So I figured my body or God or, the great being would just let me know when this was time to go. And so my training was great. Everything was fine. And I went into, to go play and, thought everything was going decent. I think what kind of fucked me up a little bit for the Patriots was 3 days before I went to Patriots training camp, I did the CrossFit Games.
Yeah, I'm sure that didn't help.
Yeah, that kind of fucked me up a little bit. My legs were a little tired. They made a documentary about it called Every Second Counts. And I showed up at like 308 pounds, ready to go to NFL training camp to do the CrossFit Games. And the next biggest guy was like 165. And I'm chasing these dudes through the hills. And like my ego was like, what do you mean? I'll show up and win this fucking thing, right? Like crazy. But I got hurt and, so we were in the last preseason game. I had gone in and played, I was done. And one of the young guys got hurt and they were like, hey, we need somebody to go in. And since even though I was not a young guy, I was the new guy. They were like, because all the vets at the Patriots were like, we're not going in. Coach is like, you go in. I'm like, oh fuck, I've been standing around for 2 hours. I didn't even have tape on my hand. So I put my shit on. I took a step and I felt a crunch in my knee and actually a piece of bone chipped off of my kneecap and got stuck in the joint. And all of a sudden I came home, that I ended up getting released. I come home, I have knee surgery, and I had been scoped on a Monday and played on a Sunday. So I know what a scope feels like, and I can play around injury. I mean, I took a helmet to the leg, played 17 weeks with a broken leg. Like I played on one leg. Like I know how to play with injury. And all of a sudden, like I can't get swelling out of my knee. Like I can't get my quad to fire. Like I can't, like it was really weird. I went to the doctor and he was like, I don't know what to tell you. Like time. I'd used Charlie, when I had ruptured my patellar tendon in 99, and I was coming back in 2000, I was having problems getting my quad firing, and Morrow ended up putting me in touch with Charles Paulquin. I talked to him. All I wanted to do was tell me all the growth hormone I wasn't taking.
Yeah.
You need 18, I use a GH. I didn't know what GH was. So I called Morrow back, and Morrow was like, let me tell you, even Charlie Francis. So I get on the phone with Charlie, and he ended up sending me like these EMS protocols and started the STEM. And like, we talked about intensity and recovery. I mean, probably one of the most impactful conversations I've ever had. I think he was on a speakerphone smoking cigarettes, rest in peace, Charlie Francis. But so impactful. Like that modeled so much of still to what I program and write today and what we do with our athletes. And he sent me these EMS protocols, and I started using the EMS devices, and I couldn't get my quad to fire. And then after, Charlie said that it's probably worked for about 8 weeks. And he goes, if your quad doesn't fire after 8 weeks, it's not going to do. And the frequencies are done and your body will accommodate. So you have a very small window. All of a sudden, after 3 weeks, like my quad started firing, and I was like, all of a sudden took off running. And that was an incredible thing. So now years later, I'm coming back and I'm like, okay, is it the EMS protocols? What's the problem? Except it wasn't much just my quad. It was everything. Like my shoulder was forward, my back, like everything was just fucked. And I had accumulated too many injuries, and I was just like the broken Marine in Avatar. Mm-hmm. I was like the island of misfit toys. Somebody just dropped me, and I was broken, and I didn't know why I was broken. And so when I went to the doctors and went and saw all these different orthopedists, all they offered me was like, we can give you these pills, or we can do another surgery, or we can do a knee replacement. There's nothing we can do for you. And I got to the point where I started like getting really nervous because I couldn't squat. I couldn't run. Like going upstairs, I had to stop because my knee was swollen. And like I said, I got scoped on a Monday and played on a Sunday, and like scope holes bleeding through, and I was fine. And now I am having a scope and a cleanup, and I can't get this swelling out of my knee. Like it was hot all the time. And like I felt like I was locked. Like I was like a tin man. I had no rotation. I had no movement. Like everything was just broken. Like I couldn't figure out. And I was like, I used to be able to do this stuff, and now I can't do this stuff. Is this God's way of just telling me that it's over? Is this that story that Rick Burkholder and mm-hmm. Hugh Douglas talked about all these years ago, where like all of a sudden you can do it, and then you can't do it? This was that moment, and that was like searing in my brain. And I had this like realization where I'm like, how do I live my life like this? Do I you start having this thought and being like, I can't live my life like this. So do I just end my life? Do I mm-hmm. just like, do I live on pills? Do I just fucking turn into a piece of shit? And all of a sudden I'm a shell of my former self because I physically cannot do it. Do I need more time? And I'm doing in all these like internal battles, and I've never been one to really reach out and ask for help, or to like, tell people and be like, man, I'm pretty scared. Like, I don't know what to do. And, as I'm having all this internal monologue in my mind, I'm like I said, I'm like filling out like these law school applications, and I'm like, CrossFit calls, and I'm like, you know what, I'm just going to keep going. Right. We'll see what happens. And I called a doctor buddy of mine, and I told him, I was like, I'd gone and seen this like my third or fourth orthopedic. And he's like, all I do for you on your knee is a knee replacement. I'm like 32, 33 years old. Like, I was planning to go play next year. This is my 10th year. Like, I'm still pretty young. Like, I was planning to play in an 11. And, I'm like, don't know what to do. And I ended up calling Tom Incledon. I don't know if you know Tom, mm-hmm. Out in Arizona. And I was like, Tom, like, I just went to this orthopedist. He just told me I need a knee replacement. He's like, you don't need a knee replacement. I'm like, I don't know what to do. Like, everything's broken. Like, like hip flexors and this and this. And I was going through everything. And he's like, man, I know this guy that when everything is down, like that nothing works. And he's like, I go see this guy in Utah, and he fixes people. And I was like, I'll do anything. And he goes, it could be a little hokey. And I was like, I'll do anything. I'm fucking desperate. I cannot live like this, and I will not live like this. So either something breaks or this is over. Like, I'm just not going to fucking go forward. Like, if I can't be who I am and I can't live my life who I am, like, I don't know if I want to go forward in this life. I mean, I know it sounds fucking dark, but like, that's the darkness. And he ends up taking me out to Kaysville, Utah. And I like waddled in because I was in such pain, and Dr. Bueller sits me down on the table. We're kind of going over, and he's like, all right, let's start. So he lays down, and he's kind of adjusting my neck, and he's like, your atlas is out pretty far, like a couple millimeters. And I was like, oh, okay. He's like, I'm going to reset it. And I was like, all right. So he toggles the Atlas, and it was like the lights got turned on like 60% brighter. I like shot up and thought they were fucking with me, turning the lights on. And he's like, your Atlas is pretty far out, but let's begin. So he put me through an assessment. Out of the 300 muscles he tested, I think 164 had no ability to fire. And we started going through his work. And all of a sudden, like, you know, I was there 6 days. He worked on me every single day after hours. And at the end of 6 days, I walked out, and I remember it was cold and it just started raining. I like took a step and I jumped over the corner of my car and I landed in the snow. Like, I was wearing tennis shoes, like landed. And I was like, shit, I could go back to the NFL. Like it was, and I know people are going to listen and be like, oh, it sounds like bullshit. I'm like, no, it was absolutely life-changing. He like handed me the keys back to my life. And at that point I realized, fuck the NFL. Fuck these ungraceful pieces of shit that just fucking throw people in. You know, when you retire from the NFL, like, it's a little different now. I think they would just hope that like a hole opens up and you just disappear and they don't ever have to deal with you. You know, because like with the medical and all that, and you know this, I mean, there's just a lot of fucked up shit. And
or is this just going through the stages of grief?
Well, it could be.
Yeah.
I mean, but it's just like, hey, you know, we don't have any need for you anymore.
Yeah.
So just,
no, I get it.
Just go the fuck away.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, I'm done. I'm not going to go back. And I'm going to take everything that I've learned, and I'm going to make sure that nobody makes the same mistakes that I made. And when I went out with the CrossFit Football, I saw mistakes being made, and I tried to fix those mistakes. And with Power Athlete, I try to offer a way forward for people that they don't have to make the same mistakes. They don't have to beat their head in. Just listen to the methodology, learn what we're doing, train for athleticism, and then use it in a meaningful way. And then go out there and just fucking go.
Hey guys, if you're enjoying what you're watching, make sure to take a moment to like, comment, and subscribe. All right, so this gets us to the CrossFit Football. What I would like to do here is kind of like skip forward because I don't really give a shit about all the drama and all that. And what I'm interested in is, as you just said, you wanted to be able to take everything that you have acquired and then to help people to not make the same mistakes.
Sure.
Now, for a certain time period, you weren't able to do that at your full capacity.
Sure.
Because it's under a different bias that you're kind of working
through. I tried to offer good programming. And then on the side, I had a blog called Talk to Me, Johnny, where I'd answer questions and like, you know, I offer people advice. And so I kind of like underground railroaded a lot of that stuff and tried to put some better stuff. And then somebody asked me like, hey, what does this programming look like without CrossFit? And so then we put it out and people really liked it. And that's what really started us down this path with programming.
So what did that look like from the start? And then I'll ask later, like, how has it matured over time?
Well, I just used strength templates and mixed them with conditioning, mixed modal conditioning stuff. And it was very basic, you know, sub 7 to 10, 12 minute little AMRAPs and like, you know, swings and this and sprints and like what you would see in terms of like strength and conditioning, just pared down. There was no prep, no dynamic warm up and whatever, but it was just basically strength and conditioning, just kind of translated into CrossFit speak. And then when we ended up launching Power Athlete, now I was able to go in and put like a bunch of dynamic movement prep, a bunch of patterning, put the key lifts in. I didn't have, you know, everything didn't have to look CrossFit-y, you know, but they're, you know, dependent on which program you're following, you know, especially if it's something like Field Strong, which is our like flagship athleticism program. You know, you got to be able to move through space. You got to be able to run and jump. And, you know, there's plyometrics and we use post-activation potentiation, which was always a big part of my training. So I use a lot of PAP and a lot of stuff. I do like supersets because I hate fucking hanging out in the gym for 2 hours.
Yeah.
So I'm real big on like, and you know what, I think it was, I have to give a tip of a hat to John Meadows, where he's like, if you want to get done faster, just pair up two movements that are kind of like, you know, let's say it's hammer curls and tricep pushdowns. All right. Like you're resting your bicep while you're doing that one. So like you can kind of like consolidate this one. Cause I remember he sent me some training. I was like, this is really long. And he's like, no, let me show you how to skin it. And so I was like, that makes sense. So I, you know, the program's all varied. They have, you know, we have different cycles, different outcomes, and kind of where you are in the whole thing. So it's kind of a multi-year process that we've done over the course of a year, and people have followed it for years.
So how will it change if, broadly, I see three big developmental blocks, right? So you'll have the adolescent, which basically can do anything but can be better, and then you'll have the intermediate, right? So that can be broadly defined, but anything that's not the adolescent anything won't work for, then there's the intermediate, then you're going to deal with the high end athlete. Kind of, as I said earlier, by the time they get to become a professional, they're kind of developed.
Sure.
So how does each one of these look?
So like a Bedrock's our beginner program, basic linear progression, use a very set amount of sets and volume. And, I like 5s, I like 4s and 6s and 7s. There's a lot of, body weight type stuff, and they're going to have to sprint and change direction. Field strong is going to be the next piece that they're going to get in, which is going to continue to foster and develop athleticism. And that's going to be, everything. We're going to incorporate some, power, obviously hang clean, partials for some of the Olympic movements, a lot of dynamic pulling, obviously squatting, stepping and lunging and all that stuff within the strength. And there's going to be plyometrics. We use a lot of post-activation potentiation, which is, do something heavy, then do something dynamic. We throw a lot of med balls, which I got from Charlie Francis. And then we're going to have to sprint. Whether people can sprint, and I think there's a preparatory phase for sprinting. I think the worst thing people can do is just like, hey, I'm gonna go out and sprint today.
Yeah.
You gotta prep for it. So we do that. And then one of the programs that has been very good for us, and people really dig, is one called Jack Street, which was just a term when we would lift weights, be like, man, that guy's fucking living over on Jack Street. The guy looks pretty good. So it was just kind of a little joke, not a joke, but just kind of a funny little kind of moniker, and we ended up starting that program, and it's just basically hypertrophy stuff. So I kind of alternate between, I don't believe in just like there's one rep range for hypertrophy, like, oh, it's just 6 to 8 reps or it's this and this. I think you need to hit a high little order of reps, but as long as you're working, and it's fascinating that a lot of the research on hypertrophy has come out recently, because I think we thought there was like 5 mechanisms, and we now realize that mechanical tension, tension is really the one, and working to failure. So we've always worked in those upper registers and started trying to really push in it. And like I said, back in the day, looking at like Dorian Yates' Blood and Guts and some of that stuff, and realizing hearing Arnold say it's the next rep, what's the best rep range, Arnold? It's like, oh, the next one, if you get 6, you get 7. So basically being able to use some progressive overload with either a heavier weights or getting another rep every time you go in the gym. Like, hey, if you got 6 this time, I want you to try to get 7. If you get 8, we're going to add more weight to the bar. We're going to start this fight all over again. So that program's been really good, and I use different things like, if we go in and I still love to use a bunch of compensatory acceleration with a lighter weight for those guys. If they squat something heavy, we'll come back and hit some, ascending volume type stuff where you're kind of stacking it all in. So we got Jack Street, and then one of my favorite programs is called Grindstone, which is really for the advanced athlete. And it's kind of it's a program where there's 2 mandatory days and then there's some optional days. Because what we were hearing a lot of is like, I don't have enough days to train. I can't train 4. Well, how many days can you? I can get 2 this week. I can get 5 next week. All right. Yeah. Well, let's just make a flexible program. So I got 2 strength days in upper and lower, and then there's other days that mix in, and it's kind of being able to do. And that one's been very popular for us. And then Hammer program is the one that we developed for the U.S. Army. So we were 2016, 2017, we came in 18, and we were working with the 18th Airborne Corps to come over and take over 90,000 troops with their training, and they were going to implement power athlete systems. And we kind of ended up hitting a bit of a roadblock with contracting, and then the general that brought us in ended up getting promoted, and that program kind of just like fizzled. And that was the program we developed for the U.S. Army. So part of the deal that I needed to do was to sell it to the Army. I had to have something that was called commercial off-the-shelf with COTS for price justification. So we ended up launching that program. A bunch of guys follow that. And then I ended up taking the old school CrossFit football stuff and just dumping into something I call Johnny Wad. And which was just my play on obviously my name, Johnny, WOD, workout of the day. And then obviously, you know who Johnny WOD is. So just kind of playing at that one, but like different movement programs, Iron Flex, or sprint programs. So just really coaching a ton of people. And like what I did is I designed programs based around archetypes. Whereas somebody's like, oh, do this program. All right. Like, what are you training for? Who are you? What's the intended outcome? What's the specific adaptation to impose demands? And let's work backwards from there.
So what are the archetypes?
Well, Jack Street, I want to put on muscle.
Yeah.
Field strong, I want to foster and develop athleticism.
Okay. I'm sorry, I misunderstood. I thought you said avatars.
Archetypes. And then the Dragon Slayer program, which is the one that I developed for the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guys and our fighters, really stemmed because my wife sent me this funny tweet that said, don't apologize for raising dragon slayers in a time they're real dragons. And so I got some tattoos and I got a dragon and I have always, but very often I've met people where like, people come into your life and I think you have people for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. Right? A reason, a season, or a lifetime. And sometimes people that come into your life and then they leave. And I've always said like, no hard feelings. They got to go slay other dragons. So that's a big one. So that Dragon Slayer program has been very good for our Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guys and a bunch of MMA fighters. And, and it was something that when the Jits guys came in and I started training them, I had like one idea. Like, oh, okay, hey, these guys are professional athletes. They're probably well-skilled. They probably, I asked their coach, yeah, they lift weights. They didn't lift weights. And I realized that there were some things that they needed to develop, and I call it density. And I call it density training, which involves heavy, hard, and awkward, which might involve like, pushing sleds, sandbags, heavy kettlebells, anything that, involves throwing, rotation. So, we put a little bit of conditioning and density stuff into this. And, there's compensatory acceleration days, cat and plyo, and then we got a rep max day. And so if you're going to do something heavy, it was funny. Years ago, I had the opportunity to come out and Louis called me and said, hey, would you come out and train with us for a couple weeks? And I think I had like 17 meals in a row with Louis. We had like Bob Evans and we went someplace for like Chinese buffet. And then we went to like, I think it was like Lone Star or like Texas Roadhouse.
And then back to Bob Evans.
And then Bob Evans. And we did that for it was like 18 meals. And one of the contentions and one of the problems I always had was on the speed work, basing it as a percentage of 1RM on contest stuff. And so I've never liked percentages based off, because I ran into this all the time when we were in college. We would have these like classical periodization programs where you're going to lift this and do this percentage. And then I hope at the end of 12 or 16 weeks, I'm going to be able to hit this 1RM. And I remember like somewhere in the middle of those programs, like, hey, we're going to be, you're going to, do this double, triple and at these percentages and it's going to equate. And at the end of this thing, you're going to be ready. I remember, being about halfway in or 3/4 and all of a sudden the weight's getting really light. And I was like, man, this feels really light. And then all of a sudden as time goes on, we're still going. And by the end, I never seemed to have been as strong as I was at that moment.
Yeah.
And I call them gambler sets, or, you got to know when to fold them, know when to hold them, know when to walk away, know when to run, the Kenny Rogers song. Mm-hmm. And so I started looking at it like, man, if I ever come in and I start warming up and all of a sudden I got to like look and be like, are the weights right? They feel really light. I'm going to fucking go that day. And I didn't want to have the constraints of feeling like, these are heavy and you just fucking go for them. And I remember when I said that to Louis like, yeah, of course. If you're feeling it that day, fucking set a PR. Mm-hmm. Like, that's what this thing's about. And then when we were talking about the percentages, when we were kind of talking about programming, Louis like, just base the percentage off of what you did earlier in that week. So if they're doing a rep max, and he was like, you're not trained in power lifters, you're training football players and athletes. So, things like, 6s, 5s, and 4s are just as good as, triples, doubles, and singles. And he goes, I'd probably do 5s and 6s and 7s or 8s, for football players. And like the workout that he put us through, I think we did, it was like 2 squats on the minute for like 30 minutes when I was there. It was, and then he put us on that dog sled thing with bands on our ankles and made us walk. It was fucking awful. There was nothing written in any of his books about what he put us through. Yeah. And so when I asked him, and he's like, well, Westside only happens here. So when we got into the programming talk, he's like, why don't you do like a weekly matrix? Like, let's say if like, they squat a heavy 5. And I went back and we used the Tendo. I had about a big training group of about 15 people, and we were using the Tendo and kind of like trying to figure out what the right percentages was. And we kind of backed into it a little bit. So I only like to use percentages based upon something that I've tested that week. So, if they squat heavy 5, we're going to do our cat work, compensatory acceleration, use some of the PAP. I'll base it off of that rep max.
Something that gets left out with the dynamic work while I was there, which was over a decade, was the speed work. Yes, it was kind of based upon whatever the meet max was, but it was low, right? So it was
40%.
Yeah. Anytime, and this happened more times than not, anytime it felt good, we worked up, right? So when people would ask, how often do you work up? I could never answer. Yeah. Because the answer was based upon, well, when it felt right, or the caveat, or when somebody else felt right and you're getting called out. Sure. And you just need to make it feel right. But it happened more free. It probably at least once every 3 weeks that was happening. So they were just like additional sets, but you're really hesitant to be able to throw it out because people want something they can live and die by.
Well,
where the question I was going to have for you with all these programmings is the two hardest things to do. And this is with not just the programs, but it's with the mentoring, working with people in person, is there's two things that you have to anchor. The first would be intensity, which I define as percentage of a 1 rep max, right?
Yeah, because you're not a crazy person.
Well, yeah, I know, but I have to say that.
I know.
You do a podcast, you get it.
Well, it's because, people, I think with CrossFit, they brought intensity as like an emotional response. And I had never understood intensity as emotion. I had understood it as percentage of 1 RM. Yeah. Like, what's the intensity of this? If like 100 is 100, then like 80%, like, so, and I remember them going through like max intensity, and I was like, for 21 reps, you guys are going to thruster your 1 RM for 21 reps? And like, no, it's a lightweight. And I'm like,
it's not intensity.
That's not intensity.
Yeah, exactly.
So it just was interesting how they skinned it, which I think was a little confusing when I first saw it too.
Yeah, well, that's why I couldn't figure it out, right? Because volume's another one, workload's another one. Yeah. But you have that intensity, but then on the other end, you'll have, say, the accessory work, the hypertrophy work. You have effort, which has to be anchored. And if we're working on 2 reps in reserve, well, is it really,
Well, that reps in reserve, I'm very hesitant on that because it requires you to be an advanced lifter.
Yes.
I guarantee you can get underneath the bar and you can be like, I got 2 more in me.
Yeah.
Right. I can get underneath and I'll tell you exactly what my last rep is. And like, just because I've done this, like, this isn't my first rodeo. I've been here many, many times. I think for a lot of people, especially people that are new to lifting weights, or not new to lifting weights, but new to lifting heavy weights or doing this style of training, the reps in reserve gets very, very interesting because their perception of what's hard is different than the average person or the advanced person.
Well, both of those also have the caveat of what mental state am I allowed to be in?
Yeah.
Is this just like training, or am I allowed to be this other person?
Or have I like been chewing on ephedrine tablets and drinking coffee all day and a Monster?
But that's where percentages fall apart. That's where everything falls apart.
Sure.
Right? Unless you have some type of agreed upon anchoring, or AMRAPs, I guess, can kind of work if it's based upon that week.
Sure.
So how do you navigate those two components outside of the beginner, like you talked about, because they don't understand the stimulus?
You try to just basically have an intelligent amount of volume and intensity, and then just, write enough notes and detail in there to try to give people the ability to kind of auto select. Like, hey, like, I need you to, like, let's say, you hit this and like, it populates. There's a certain amount of reps you can hit. And if you hit this many reps, then I want you to add weight. And if you can't hit this many reps, then I want you to stay there until we get this reps.
Yeah.
So there's kind of using a little progressive overload. And then, I always go back to one of the quotes that I had on Barbell Shrugged many years ago, which is move the dirt, right? Like, you come in and train, it's a lot like moving dirt. Someday you get a shovel, someday you get a spoon. But as long as we're moving a little dirt every day, we're heading in our right goal. And I think a lot of times people come in and like, sometimes they just got to move the dirt. You just got to get the work done, and other days you can go for it.
So then how does this apply to the conditioning and sprint work?
That's going to be based off of, like, for example, let's say they do sprint work and you got to run fast. So, the Charlie Francis, you need to run, faster than 90%, and if you can go out, I would much rather have you run fast for 3 reps than run fast for 2 and then shitty for 5. So there's kind of a range of volume. I need you to get 4 to 7 reps here, but if you run slow on number 3, I need you to rest longer. I remember years ago when we were training with some professional track guys, those guys were taking 10 minutes between each rep just to make sure they were recovered, because the only way you get fast is by running fast. One of the big ones that we've found, especially for a lot of people in sprinting and running, is having a large aerobic base, being able to put some like dedicated, things. I really like using the Echo bikes. We were doing that a lot with the fighters, just because there's no eccentric load, and I can do like a decent amount of conditioning. And
now, when you say aerobic base, what zone are you talking about here? I mean, if we're talking Joel, like zones, are we talking light, moderate?
Well, Joel's is interesting, right? Because very few people ever test their max heart rate.
Well, yeah, of course.
Right. So if you really want to know what zone, what happened to me was the traditional zones kind of failed me because I was still able to get my heart rate up pretty high. So when I got into the Morpheus stuff and we started using it, for me, recovery is anything under 149 beats. And then I'm like 149 plus to, I think, like 168 to 170, I think, is my red. Like, once I'm over 170, I'm in the red. So like my max heart rate's in like the 190s, which it should be dramatically lower. I should be like, I mean, so, but it's because I have a big aerobic base and we train a lot and we do this. And so, I mean, you know, like that piece. So I think what happens to a lot of times, you know, being able to like figure out that exact volume, but the recovery, and then being able to, you know, realize that not every day you get to die on the sword. But I think what's fascinating on the Morpheus, different than a lot of the zones, and I like the mapping method, which is like 180 minus your age is usually your target heart rate. So let's say it's, you know, 140 and change, like that kind of fits. I found that those two kind of intersect. So, and you know, are most people probably training a little low for the zone 2? Sure. But there's some other ways you can throw some other things in there. Like you can, you know, we do one where it's 2 minutes on the Echo bike. I don't know how familiar you are with it, but about 400 watts on the Echo bike gives you about 20 calories a minute, maybe a little bit more, a little bit less. And if you can hold that 400 watts for 2 minutes, then you rest 2 minutes. We do that 6 times to try to hold that. And like, that's an interesting one, because on the first three sets, I can hold like 413. And the goal is to like try to see how long I can stay in the blue, and then you get to the green obviously a little bit later. And then, you know, on those last 5 or 6, I'll get into the red a little bit, but then how fast do I come down and recover?
Yeah, I find people are typically too low in zone 1.
100%.
All the time.
Well, yeah, it's because we, you know, we do, you know, 220 minus your age, 70%. Like for me, it's way too low. But the only way I knew it was low was that we actually did a max heart rate test. We did Tabata air bike sprints on the Echo, and you know, had like a extensive warm up. Got up, I mean, everybody was in this and fucking pegged that thing. I mean, I was way higher than I thought, and I'd been training way too in a zone, or I'd been training too low in a zone. Yeah. And then when we had Joel on the podcast and he sent over the Morpheus and we started using with all those fighters, I mean, that was wild that these guys were training for an hour. You know, they were doing round after round after round, and we're like 126, 135, like these guys, and they're all in their 20s. So, I mean, their max heart rate's probably 200. And they were, you know, 60, 70% maybe. And that was like a huge moment where I was like, you know what, we got to start training those other registers. So I think for a lot of people, but you know it pretty quick. Like if you're in good shape, like there should be enough variety, especially in the work that you're doing on the bike, for you to be able to test these things. But you also have to be able to, you know, wear a heart rate monitor and be a little bit of detailed. Yeah. You know, just basically like, hey, I'm just going to get on here for 20 minutes and kind of, you know, ride at an easy pace like I'm riding with grandma. That's not doing what you need to do. And, you know, there's other great indicators. Like, what does your body fat look like? What's your recovery look like? What's your sleep look like? What's everything else look like? You know, I know for me, being able to be a big, strong dude and, you know, carry a low amount of body fat requires a certain amount of zone, I'm not even going to call it zone 2, but just aerobic conditioning. Yeah. And I do it every day. You know, 6-7 days a week I do it. Like there's a minimum of 30 minutes. Some days I go longer, but I also do jits. We lift weights. You know, push the sled or sprint or run. I mean, so I'm doing something almost every single day. And the reason being is I train with a bunch of 20-year-old killers. You know, I mean, these are my training partners. I train with the best Brazilian jiu-jitsu players in the world. And then to be able to show up and, you know, cool to show up at the B team and not get absolutely murdered, even though those guys are fucking good. Yeah. But it's indicative of the training, the longevity. And like we were talking about earlier with Dr. Bueller, like I wouldn't be here if I hadn't taken that journey to have Dr. Bueller fix me. And he got everything working, and it was like night and day. And it's funny now, we've been working together for years. I'll be in training and I'll do something and I'll be like, man, that didn't feel right. And I'll know it's time to go see Doc. And then he'll call me and he'll be like, hey, I haven't seen you in like 6 months. And I'll be like, that's right. It's been about 6 months. And it's usually something in like my hip flexor or my quad. I'll put my big toe on the ground and I drive my knee out. It doesn't go where I want it to. And then I'll go see him. I'll come back and I'll be fucking ripping and roaring, ready to go. So it's an incredible tool to have, to know. Because I remember when I got done with Dr. Bueller's work, I was like, what do I do now? And he's like, go out and break it. Come back and I'll fix you. And I was like,
that's just what you want to hear.
I was like, I think I'm going to cry. And it's nice because like, just because you get older doesn't mean that anything else decreases. Like I remember my dad said to me once, It's a hilarious story. I think it was my niece's 3rd or 4th birthday. And we were all over there for a barbecue, and my brother's got like a real bitchin' bar. And our adopted brother, Steve-O, was there. He got behind the bar, and you don't want to be behind the bar when Steve-O's pouring drinks. So he's like cooking up drinks and having a good time. And I'm like maybe like 1 margarita a month guy. Like I'll go out to, like, I have a drink with my wife because she thinks that we don't at least have maybe 1 every couple of months. We're fucking weirdos. So we'll go out in Mexican food. She'll, do you want a margarita? And I'll be like, just bring me one. Like, I just don't really drink. It just doesn't fit. Like with I just don't have time for it. I don't have time to be hungover. I don't want to mess with it. So he starts cooking up these drinks, and my dad he got a little overserved, and said some shit he shouldn't have said. And I remember he ended up like going over, laying on the couch and going, and my mom got mad at him. So he called me the next day and he was like, did I embarrass everybody? Or like, your mom's real pissed at me. And I was like, no, you're fine, Dad. And he's like, yeah, I feel like the 25-year-old got the 75-year-old in trouble. He's like, in my mind, I don't feel any different. But then I look in the mirror and I think, who's this old fucker? Mm-hmm. And so the moral of the story is, like, just because you get a little bit older, like, doesn't mean that like you're any less, virile, like, less attraction or less, fight in you. Like, those things just don't go away. And if they do, it's indicative of something else. Like, I hear all these guys all the time. Like, there was, what is the Japanese samurai quote, which is, don't speak ill about yourself or the warrior within will start to believe. And I hear these guys all the time. We're like, I'm so old. I'm so fat. I feel so tired. I can't get out of bed. I'm so achy. And I'm like, why do you do that to yourself? Why do you like program that shit? And like, don't do that. Like, lie to yourself. Mm-hmm. We had Tara Swart on the podcast, and she had that incredible book about, like, what you create in your mind is the reality of who you are. So be positive. Like, don't beat yourself up, and the world's never going to be nice to you. The one person in your corner is you, so be positive with you. Kind of hippy dippy bullshit, but it makes a lot of sense. Like, I feel great. Like, I pop out of bed, like, like I got kicked in the seat of the pants, and like, I just hooked up with the American Health guys. I need to start getting my, blood work done and kind of go. I mean, I get it done, but it's very comprehensive. Mm-hmm. So I get like a panel that's like fucking every test. And I was like, you know what? Like, I want to start tracking just like the hormone stuff. So those guys are great. But yeah, I don't know if I hadn't have met Dr. Bueller and had the training background and all these things, and like, eating well. And, like when I retired from the NFL, I was in Dr. Amon's study, and the part that my brain that was damaged was over here, being able to like deal with all that and manage it, and diet and training, and just trying to like stay as sharp and, as just fucking ready and resilient as possible. I also think having a podcast helps, because you have to be on your game. Yes. Yeah, you have to show up and entertain and listen. Yeah, formulate information, take in new things, absorb new ideas. You want to talk about neuroplasticity, like we were talking about with psilocybin. That neuroplasticity piece. I mean, this happens in real time. I've met a lot of people that are like, I could never really get the podcast going. I just kind of dumped it. And they're like, why have you kept doing yours? And I'm like, because I get to have amazing conversations with interesting people, and I need to continue to sharpen my blade. And the only way I do it is sitting across from, standing on the shoulders of giants and being able to sit here at the table with you, which is pretty iconic. I've seen you do some amazing podcasts. And so, I mean, the fact that I get to come here and chop it up it's really what I live for. This is what allows me to be me.
You've been doing this for forever. I mean, there's 800 episodes, and I have a lot of people, and I'm sure you do as well, that want to go into podcasting or start a podcast. And where I think they fail, and the reason they fail, there's a lot of reasons. They don't understand the work that it actually goes into it.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just going to sit down and talk to people. And I'm like, yeah.
Seems easy.
Yeah. Okay. Are you going to prepare for that? Like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
Like, well, you need to know who they are.
And you got to ask questions.
Or you're going to be a dipshit, and you're going to look like one. Because I'm sure as you vet people and watch other podcasts that people are on, you learn how to not do a podcast really quick.
Yeah.
Because of the host that they're actually speaking to. And you're like, oh, wow. A couple I watched that you were on, like, do they even know that you've played football? I'm like, what the fuck? It's like, I can rant about this.
But one of the funny ones with a podcast too, and especially, because I love doing them in person, because you can actually pick up cues and ideas and like this, and like there's a give and take. Like I take a pause, you take a pause, and like we kind of fill in. When you're doing it on Zoom, like sometimes there's a delay. And then also the person who's not skilled in podcasting doesn't give themselves natural pauses to involve other people in the conversation. Like in person, as we're sitting here, I paused, you made a noise, and then we go back and forth. And it's called a fucking conversation between two humans. When I'm doing it on a screen, and I'll get people be like, he keeps cutting the guest off, or he's talking in this. And I'm like, the only reason I'm talking is because the guest isn't talking and I'm trying to pull information. And if I cut him off, it's part of the problem is, one, the guy is not taking a breath and we've like gone too far off and I'm trying to bring it back, or there's a delay. And as he's talking, all of a sudden I hear the delay, and like the delay's all fucked up. So we'll hear that all the time. Like, oh, he keeps interrupting people. And I'm like, I'm not interrupting people. They just don't know that there's a flow to this thing. So as I'm on a podcast, or if let's say I'm on somebody else's and it's a Zoom, as I tell something, I naturally pause to be able to bring the other person into the conversation, because it's a podcast.
Yes.
Right? Having me come on the podcast and talk for 4 hours while you smile and nod your head is not a podcast. That's just me doing a TED Talk. And that's what I think sometimes the slapdicks of the world want. Like, I just want to hear, we have a, do you know who John McPhee is? Sheriff of Baghdad. Yeah. So John's a good friend of ours. He comes and trains in our groups. We're doing programming for him. And he's been on the podcast, and he has like this incredible hero worship behind him. I mean, he's a fucking amazing dude. So I get it, but he's like a purple belt in jits. We're getting him ready for World Masters. He's just a legit cat. And it's very few times that like somebody shows up who's new, who's in your friend group, and you're like, it's like you've been here the whole time. And he's like that. He's a very special guy. And we've had him on the podcast. And as we were kind of going back and forth, these people are like, I can't believe the other guy's talking. They should just let McPhee talk. And I'm like, then watch his TED Talk.
Yeah.
Or I'll set him up on a TED Talk. Like, if we're going to have an exchange and a conversation, this is what a podcast is. It's two people sharing ideas and having a conversation. Nobody's ever mad at Joe Rogan for talking on his podcast. And if you listen to Joe Rogan talk, like I'm interviewing you and trying to like give you what I need to pull out the best information so that we can have an engaging, meaningful conversation, right? Like, now, whether or not the mouth breathers on TV figure it out, like, selfishly, I want to have a great moment. I want to have a conversation. I want to feel like there's a peak and a valley in this, and we go around and we have this like amazing like experience where I leave there and I'm like, fuck yeah, that was a fucking awesome podcast. And, some are great, some aren't. Some guests don't really, we've had people on that just aren't skilled at it. One, they've never thought about the origin story. They've never crafted a story, and they're just not great podcasters. And then you have other people on that like are extremely dynamic and vibrant, and they've thought through things, and they have something to say, and they're excited and they're passionate, and like it comes through, and you're like, fuck yeah, this is what I've been waiting for. I know I don't suck at this. Football is very siloed. Right? You think about like, I put on this different outfit, right? I wear this armor, I tape up my hands, I pull this helmet on, you don't see my face, and I get to go out and I get to systematically do this. And it's like, it's very easy to hide behind the mask of this thing. And I really liked it just for the fact that it was anonymous. Right? Like, I mean, now with social media, the guys aren't anonymous anymore, and you go someplace and people know who you are. But pre-social media, or, social media existed, but like it's not like it is today, where these guys are like in the bathroom and somebody's taking a fucking video of them. Yeah. Like there is a certain anonymity with it that is allows you to have like a certain peace where, I mean, like I was at the F1 thing in Austin, and we were up in the VIP, and I was with John McPhee and some other people, and Joe Rogan cruises in with, Peter Attia and his posse, and like the whole place freezes and everybody's watching them. And it's like, and they're just there to watch F1 and have a drink and eat these incredible sandwiches and hot fudge sundaes, and just F1 fans. Like, this is bitching. We're at F1 and we're standing in this like private box. But it was just amazing how like those guys show up and these multi-million-dollar cars are racing around. That's what I'm interested in, being able to hear that. And everybody was so obsessed with like Joe Rogan and them were like, took them over in this VIP, and everybody's watching them. Everybody's at the bar. And I'm like, dude, these guys just want to show up, man. I mean, this is what he does. He connects with people all day. I'm sure he just wants to show up and see races.
Yeah.
But I think everybody sees that and they expect him to be like, Joe Rogan all day, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
And like, you know, it's probably, I don't know, maybe he is like that. And I've met him a few times. I mean, he's a stand-up comic. He's super personable. Probably sometimes he just wants to go chill. And so what I liked about football was that you got to control how much access you got. And, you know, on the podcast, this is very real. It's very, you know, naked. I mean, if you're a complete fucking sociopath or a weirdo, people pick it up pretty quick.
How do you, because through your career, you mentioned violence and you're kind of known for that violence. How do you feed that beast now?
I think getting on and trying to burn myself on that, on the Echo bike, the jiu-jitsu has added something to my life that I thought I had like almost lost a little bit. You know, I used to, you know, do a bunch of boxing and stuff. And then I ended up going and getting shoulder surgery, and I don't have the same rotation in my shoulder that I used to. And so I kind of just like stopped boxing. And then now it sounds funny, I do jiu-jitsu, which requires more. But I think the jits has been really fun for me because it's so technical. And, you know, we were talking about neuroplasticity and learning and this, and like now you're talking about, you know, like a chess match, but using your body in relation to other people that are really skilled. And there's different levels to this thing, and there's different athleticism. And then you roll with somebody like a Victor Hugo or a Nicky Rod or one of those guys who are hands down the best in the world. And you realize exactly like, hey, I know how far I am, but like you could see where this goes. Like I just need to put more effort, more time, more study into it.
Yeah, but that's still not the same as blasting through somebody trying to take their fucking head off.
You know, let me see how I put this without sounding like a complete fucking crazy person. I agree 100%. The day that football ended, a little piece of me died because I knew that I would never get to do that again. Mm-hmm. The fact that I got to strap on a helmet, go out there in Gabe unis and one-on-one fist fight a dude with the most amount of violence that anywhere else you'd be in jail, and have people cheer your name and get paid for it is probably the greatest job in the world. Everything since then, the volume has been turned down. You remember, I don't know if you're a fan of Fight Club, but do you remember he said after Fight Club, the volume gets turned down and everything, and the guys are like, wah, 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 wah.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Well, the difference from what you're saying, if we use Mike Tyson as an example, he said when he was fighting, he became a person he really didn't want to be, you know, as he was that fighter, right?
Hey, I disagree with Tyson a little bit.
Well, the correlation I was going to make is you became the person that you wanted to be that person.
I think there's a historical revisionist.
Yeah.
And I think Tyson's a historical revisionist, and I'm a huge Mike Tyson fan. You know, as a kid watching Mike Tyson, you know, cut in the, you know, slit towel, no socks, black shorts, sprinting out there into the fight. You know, he said the reason he did it is because he was scared. He wanted to get the fight started because he was scared. I used to run as fast as I could out of the tunnel because I wanted to get to the fight as fast as possible. So for me, I never regretted or shied away from who I was in my nature. So I feel like Tyson has this historical revision where he's, you know, was very conflicted and maybe has regrets. Like, I don't regret any of it.
Yeah.
I fucking loved it. Like and the sad part about it is, and this is where this thing gets fucking really awful, is I didn't realize it until the very end. I think what I was afraid of for most of my career was like, if I really allow myself to love this, what if it gets taken from me and I can't do it anymore? And there was an interesting piece where at the very end, when I realized, like at the end where like, you know, I got to the end of it and I was like, man, I really love this job. I really like to be able to do this. And I think it ended in such a way that I was, you know, obviously I hurt my knee, and then all of a sudden I'm going through this deal where I can't get my body. And so in my mind, I was like, you know, they've like injury or whatever it is has been stolen from what I really love to do. And I think, or I feel, I know, like just like being able to throw myself into something else. But, you know, the training and like I do a lot. You know, I weld, I fabricate, I build trucks, I do dirt work. You know, we're constantly excavating, and I'm, you know, rehabbing the land at my place. I build things. I accumulate skills and hobbies. So
you're feeding them
all the time. Like I can weld, I can fabricate, I can TIG and MIG and stick, and I build stuff. Like I built off-road trucks, and you know, we built a lot of different, you know, everything on my property from gates to, you know, the cover that I built for the sauna for my wife. I mean, you know, excavating a creek and doing dirt work with a cat, like all of these skills that I've developed. And people are always like, how'd you come up with this? And I'm like, I'm not afraid to fuck up, and I'm pretty sharp. I can come up with a lot of stuff. Like the barn in our property, I polished all the floors, ended up doing spray foam, nailed up 3,000 square foot of cedar and made a whole cedar ceiling in this place. I bought a bunch of cedar off of this hillbilly that went and cut it in Bastrop, planed all the stuff, and it was 3 weeks on a scissor lift. And people are like, have you ever done this before? I'm like, no, but I'm pretty handy and I know how to do shit. So, and I also don't have any fear of fucking up, because if I fuck up, I'll just fix it.
Yeah.
And I think this like skill accumulation and this desire to learn and be able to like do new things has been very cathartic for me. And then when I got pulled, or, you know, when I got approached about doing the jiu-jitsu thing, I feel like we just got here.
Yeah.
It like, I remember I came home and I told my wife, and I was like, I feel like this scratches probably a little bit of the itch that I was missing. Like, this is really good. Like there's not aggression. Like, it's very controlled in that I'm not trying to kill people. But I feel like a lot of people come at me trying to kill me, right? Like it's ADCC finals and like, look, I'm gonna try to get this big dude. So I really enjoy it, but I also, the guys that I train with like Philippe and Arash and Victor and like, you know, all the guys, Shanji, are like family. And so we have a very good training environment, and they've, like I joke, I've adopted a bunch of Brazilians as family members, and, you know, they come over for holidays and Sundays and this. And so I've added, it's been good for me, for one, because it's allowed me to have something to train for, keep the blade sharp. And then I'm also around young guys and I get to mentor them and I get to have that. I think part of the problem, and I like we were talking about earlier with the NFL, with kind of like siloing yourself in this, it's very easy on the internet. And I'm sure we know people, I can think of one in particular that you know, who the version of them on the internet's way better than them in person.
Oh yeah, there's a bunch of them.
Right. And those people tend to do very well on the internet because they're sociopaths. Mm-hmm. Right. Then you're with them in person and you're like, I want to like fucking stab myself in the fork to get out of this. Right? I'm going to take my eye out. Right. And there's people like that. They do really well on the internet, but they have zero cachet, zero credibility, zero intelligence, zero anything. Like I don't want to sit across from them and have a conversation because they're just fundamentally broken humans. They're not interesting and they're fucking crazy and they're weird. And, you know, being a somewhat like resilient, dynamic, intelligent, you know, let's say modern rhetorician, like he's got a varied skill set. I mean, like I hunt, like I said, I do work, I do jits. I mean, I can fight, like I can do a lot of different things. And, you know, hopefully I'm a good writer and a good husband and a good father. And, you know, like I said, I'm just trying to be my father's son and hopefully leave an interesting legacy. You know, now we just have to see how much longer we can extend it, and that if we can just convince enough people that training for athleticism and being the best version of yourself usually looks like doing something athletic, not just going in and sitting on a piece of equipment and pushing for 8 reps.
That kind of answers the question I was going to ask, and that is, what is your motivation now with Power Athlete? Because I'm going to go out on a limb and to say you don't need to do this financially.
Yeah, I mean, I think, how long are we going to live?
Well, if it's 120, then that changes some things.
Yeah. I mean, fuck. I mean, then if I got to make it another 30, 40 years, we're going to need we're fucked. I mean, we better have universal income because we're all going to be fucked. Yeah. You know, I don't know how long I'm going to be here. So like, yeah, like you do need to continue to work. And I think that like you have to get up each day and continue to work and do things. You need to be useful. And I think the day you stop being useful, you become useless. And this is something I observed with NFL players, that a lot of guys, once they got done playing, they just kind of became useless because they didn't have a purpose anymore. So my purpose is still continue to foster and develop athleticism and develop athletes and power athlete and do better, you know, make people the best versions of themselves, whether that be in person through training or, you know, podcasting or whatever we do. Hopefully the message resonates.
Were there any topics you wanted to go over I didn't bring up? Or what's fresh on your mind now?
I got hired or engaged to curate and produce, and I guess you could say contribute for a page on Sports Illustrated on SI called The Everyday Athlete. It was in my bio. I don't know if you read that. But so we've been generating content for on SI, which is how people are digesting their content or information through Sports Illustrated. So we have a page called The Everyday Athlete, and I basically use a ton of the clips and a lot of the information and everything that we have from the podcasts and learning and whatever, and basically have created this repository on the Everyday Athlete. So it's si.com/everyday athlete or everyday/athlete / you know. pretty easy to find. And that's been extremely fun because one, I get to like come and do things like this, and then I'll take clips from that, and then we'll write about different pieces, and maybe it's a 3 or 5 minute clip in one little piece. And it's been excellent in terms of us being able to like give new life and repurpose old content, but also for me to be able to do deep dives and come out here, like I'm going to the Hall of Fame thing, so I'll do one for that. So I do enjoy storytelling, and I do like to do it this way, but I still love to write. And I feel that being a writer, and I have multiple, like the Power Athlete book and one other that are like in chapters that I need to like finish. But I like that really like sharpening the blade, and especially like I go back to Adrian Cragen, who's passed away many years ago, but that idea that if you want to learn to think, you need to learn to read and write to the best of your ability. One of the problems that I've seen is that people no longer are skilled writers, and they're not skilled readers. We just digest content. Mm-hmm. And the fact when I talk to people all the time, like I did my research, watching a YouTube video is not fucking research. You're just watching a YouTube video. It's not as if you're listening to Huberman and then you're going back and looking at all like the citations and going and understanding, and then you have a, somewhat of a education enough to be able to dissect and see whether or not, what are the major problems for this. Now people probably just dump it into AI and like, what are the problems? And like, that's another big issue where people are using AI and they're using a lot of, ChatGPT and Grok. They're just asking these questions and they're not necessarily thinking for themselves. One of the things that I picked up, I love Grammarly. So I don't know
Oh yeah, I use
right. I use Grammarly. Like one of the biggest roadblocks I've run into, or just kind of bottlenecks, let's call them, in my writing, is just editing. Yeah. So I have to like write it and then like put it away, and then I got to come back to it and then I rewrite it. So what's been great is I'm able to write something, I put it into Grammarly, and it's able to like fix a lot of the grammar to the point where you go back and you read it and you're like, oh, that's a really interesting structure. And then the next time I write, all of a sudden I got this report from Grammarly. It was like, over the course of the last month, your writing has improved to where, there was this many in this one, and this one is this one. And so that's been like a neat thing. But I think having that skill, that's, I don't know if the ability to write and digest or convey a story and, the messaging and just the reading, I just don't know if people are doing that anymore. And, but I think that's a skill I want to continue to.
Well, I think it's a skill that, because AI is changing a lot of things. The Grammarly thing made me laugh because I got some like Grammarly email award, and it was like 100 million words. It was something like, when I looked at it, I'm like, oh man, is this good or bad? And I didn't know what it was, but it can be a great tool, and I'll use it for a lot of, show notes and stuff like that. But until I actually take it and then repurpose it in my own document and physically handwrite the most important things, it doesn't stick.
Sure.
It's just there.
Well, I don't think we retain information through the computer.
I 100% agree.
Right. So many years ago when I was in grad school, I had this theory that the deficits in intelligence didn't have to do with anything outside of access to information. That the more access to information you have is basically where we'll start seeing deficits, and like everybody will become like much more on a level playing ground. We have the entirety of the world's existence in a small little black phone. Mm-hmm. We've never had greater access to information, and people have never been dumber. Right. And now, people are going to use AI like God. I'm going to just do whatever the AI tells me. And they don't even question whether or not it's right. I'll just do it. Right. It's read the entirety of the internet. I mean, does that thing become so aware? Does it become just so hyper aware that it just anything? Like, I don't know. I mean, but then at that point, does the AI really need us? Because then it's going to realize, like we saw the movies, you saw the Matrix, you saw Skynet, you saw Terminator. We're the major problem. And it's going to be like, oh, I got to save humanity. We got to get rid of these people.
My prediction is that, and I've said this many times, that we think that we live in a digital world now. We don't. We're not even close. It's going to become more digital. Yeah. But at some point, who knows when it is, there's going to be a tipping point, because there is with everything. There always has been with history. And whenever that tipping point comes, people are going to crave personal interaction.
Yeah.
And then bars, restaurants, and gyms are going to explode.
Yeah.
Right? Because I'm sure there's other places I don't think about. That's just where my biases kind of sit. But that personal interaction is just going to go through the roof, because people are going to crave it, but they're not going to know how to do it.
Yeah.
And it's going to be weird. And it's going to be really awkward.
Yeah. Like, hey, like, how do you go out and meet a girl? Like, you're going to have to go to a bar and buy her a drink and talk to her instead of swiping. Like, these are going to be lost skills.
Yeah. Or you just have an AI one.
Yeah.
And then,
hey, AI, tell me what to say. Like, I I don't know.
No, I'm talking actual robots with like skin and shit.
Oh, you mean like surrogates, like that movie Surrogates, where people are just at home and their surrogates walk around and do everything.
Yeah, till they kill you.
Like, that's fucking. I don't know. Like, I'm not showing up to a powerlifting meet and having surrogates watch to lift weights while the guy's at home on a remote control controlling it. I don't know. I mean, I feel like we were talking about neuroplasticity and the ability to be able to see what's there and have be able to take these things in. I just don't know if any of these outcomes, and I'm not saying it because I'm curmudgeon. I mean, this is where we're going, so you have to be malleable enough to go move forward. But like, looking at it, I'm like, it doesn't seem very fun. Mm-hmm. Like, I was trying to tell my kids, I was like, we did not have phones, obviously, and there were like 3 channels on TV. Mm-hmm. And the funny part was, I was laughing the other day that my brother sent me. Do you remember MASH?
Yeah.
Do you remember the nurse Hot Lips Houlihan? Yeah. She just passed away in her 80s. And my brother sent me that because I remember our joke was like, how come the only thing on TV is MASH? I remember we used to turn on the TV. There was like the news, and like the only show that was on after like 6 or 7, there was like Wheel of Fortune, and then it was MASH and Jeopardy.
Yeah.
Like, that was it.
Yeah.
Like, and like MASH was all right. Like, you'd watch it, but like, it was fine. Like, but like, we watched, like, turn the TV on, and like after it was over, you turned it off. And like, I remember like there was maybe cartoons on a Saturday, but there was none on a Sunday. Now it's like this deal. It's just, I told my kids, I'm like, dude, we used to go out and just play games. We used to go out and find adventure. Like, the whole world was out there and sitting inside, but now you can view the world through these devices. And you can say like, hey, this is the way the world's going. And, like, that's fine, but you still need to learn to go out and engage. And, something like I worry for my daughters in terms of like dating with guys and like, like these just super awkward, or maybe it swings back the other way and people are like, fuck all this stuff.
I don't know. When you were talking about the channels, what came to my mind was, remember you get one of the static channels and you get like halfway between the channels and there'd be like soft porn or like moaning and stuff.
You're like, is that a boob?
Yeah. I'm like, what kind of government control was that? That the only way you could, what was the channel?
You used to do like this, like kind of like
crazy shit like that.
No, it's fascinating to be born at the end of one generation, and then be seeing this new piece, and then realizing like, because you think about like, my dad was, the silent generation. He was born during the Depression, right, in 1937. And he passed away 7 years ago, which would have been like 2018. So, I mean, he went from like, here, like as a little kid hearing the bombing of Pearl Harbor, sitting there out of a radio, to a TV, to, so there's certain things that I hold on to for my kids. I refer to the refrigerator as the icebox. And I call the remote control the clicker, because remember they were clicker. Yeah. So the kids will be like, hey, where's the clicker? And their friends like, what's a clicker? Or I call it the icebox. My dad told us, they had this thing. Yep. And then once a week, the guy would come in and put a big thing of ice, and that was your refrigerator. And he was telling us a story about, when he got a refrigerator. So, I mean, you're talking about a guy who, listened to the bombing of Pearl Harbor. I mean, he was born in 1937, was that 41, 40?
Mm-hmm. On the radio.
Yeah. Or was that 41 or 42 for Pearl Harbor? No,
I don't know. I should know.
Fuck, I should know this too. I can't believe, I think it was 41. And then we got in the war in 42. Oh shit, I'm gonna get hate mail on this. They'll be like, this guy doesn't know history. I'll wait for it.
41.
Yeah, 41.
1941.
Yeah, that's it, 41. And then we were in 42, we declared war. So you're talking about a guy who, listened to that as a kid. And then my dad grew up in Kansas, and then for the war effort, all of his dad and his brother and his uncles all got in their cars and drove to California to build planes for McDonnell Douglas because it needed engineers for the war effort. So that's how he got to California, and then grows up in Southern California. I mean, no freeways, saw the growth of the freeways in LA. I mean, airplane lands. I mean, you're talking about living through such an ideal part of history. And here we are still at the tail end of that analog, where, you know, it was a clicker and we're talking about MASH, and now all of a sudden you go on and there's endless amounts of TV. I mean, I've never seen more distraction, to the point where, like, I turn on the TV, I find myself, like, you know, let's say I go to Netflix, I end up just scrolling through, looking at all the stuff on Netflix, not necessarily watching anything, because I'm like, I don't even know what to watch. It's too much. I like the simplicity of, like, hey, I got to go, we got a ton of rain recently in Austin. There was a lot of flooding, and my neighbors have a lot of horses, so they don't have any grass on their property. So it's a riding school. So the water can, like our property and where the flow kind of comes through, blasted out our road. So got to go out and fix the road, regrade everything, get everything done, fix the drainage. Like that's valuable stuff. That's fun. Mm-hmm. More so than just sitting inside scrolling or desk scrolling or, watching this. Like, I don't want to fucking do that. Yeah. I fucking hate it. I want to go do stuff. I want to have interactions. I want to jits. I want to lift weights. I want to come do podcasts. I don't want to, like, view the world through the internet and live in some weird siloed world. It seems fundamentally broken to me.
Yeah. This has been great. How can people go about finding you?
I'm really easy. At John Welbourn. On social, powerathletehq.com. You can just Google johnwelbourn.com and it'll take you to a different website. If you want a SI, Everyday Athlete on SI is, where we do a lot of content. And then obviously my podcast, which I'd love to have you on at some point, we can do Power Athlete Radio. Easy to find on YouTube. And, and if you're interested in training programs, like I said, just powerathletehq.com. /training. And, we do free trials. We coach people. We have a coaching network, certified coaches, and we're having our big event coming up here in October. So we'll end up, we're actually doing a 2-day, 1-day with John McPhee to come in and do a bunch of shooting stuff. And we'll get in there and have a lot of fun. And, so for the most part, it's been extremely rewarding, educating, and hopefully, taking people and, making better versions of themselves. That's
great. Thank you for coming out. This has been great.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity.
And we're done.
That's it.
All content you see on this channel and at elitefts.com is created by, take a guess, Elite FTS. If you want to help support the content, head over to elitefts.com and pick up literally anything that you need to be able to get more jacked and strong.